Good evening and welcome to the Planning Board meeting for August 26, 2019. I'm going to call this meeting to order. It's 6:01. Our invocation will be given by Board Member Atukanian, and I'll lead us in our flag salute. If you'll please stand.
Please bow your heads. Heavenly Father, we thank you for this gathering. We thank you for all those who are here, who are going to be participating at the meeting today. We wish and request that you give us the wisdom and the thought to go through the hearing today with deliberation and serving the people of Burbank.
Will you please join me in saluting our flag?
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Can we have the roll call?
Yes, Chairperson. Board Member Liu?
Present.
Board Member Hadian?
Present.
Board Member Atukanian?
Present.
Board Member Gamboa? And Chair Rosati.
I am here.
So all the board members are present.
And announcements.
Just one announcement. I wanted to welcome our new board member, Matt Gamboa. So he was recently appointed. And also, not that it's on the agenda, but hopefully I won't get admonished by it. We also want to welcome back Board Member Atukanian for being placed back on the board. So, but Matt, Board Member Gamboa, if you'd like to maybe say a few words.
Yeah, I'm excited to serve on this board. I've been living in Burbank since 2010, working and doing a lot of different capacities, and I'm excited to bring my experience and expertise to this position. So thank you for having me.
Welcome.
Welcome.
So let's get to it. We have 4 hearings tonight. We'll start with number 1, Project 16-0007126, variance 242 North Niagara Street. This is the time and place for hearing on project number 16-0007126 concerning the application for variance from certain development standards required in the city's single-family residential zone. The applicant is Joshua Walker, and the project is located at 242 North Niagara Street. Before we begin, do any planning board members have any legal or other conflict of interest regarding this hearing?
No.
No.
No. Have any planning board members had any communications, including written, oral, with the applicant or the applicant's representative or any other person?
No.
No.
Matt? Mr. Ramirez, have the notices as required by law been given?
Yes, they have.
Are there any written communications on this matter?
Yes, there are. As a matter of fact, in front of your dais, there should be 2 items. One is email from Joshua Walker, and the other is also, I believe, a set of findings that have been submitted by the appellant, and that's included as part of your the record for the project.
Will the representative of the Community Development Department please introduce yourself and summarize the matter for us?
Good evening, members of the Planning Board. My name is Daniel Villa, Senior Planner with the Community Development Department. May I please have the presentation on the screen, please? Thank you. Tonight I'll be presenting on staff's analysis and recommendation regarding an application located at 242 North Niagara Street. The application you're considering tonight is a request for a variance or a deviation from the requirements of the Burbank Municipal Code that would allow the property owner the opportunity of converting a portion of an existing garage into living space. This would facilitate an expansion of the existing living room. The variance is being requested given that the expansion, as proposed, does not comply with the requirements of the Burbank Municipal Code. Specifically, the garage would be reduced in width from 17 feet 9 inches to 11 feet 4 inches, which is less than what is allowed by the Burbank Municipal Code. The Burbank Municipal Code does not allow garages to be reduced in width when they are less than 19 feet wide. As previously referenced, the project is located at 242 North Niagara Street. So we cannot orient ourselves. The property is generally located 2 blocks north from the corner of Alameda Avenue and Olive Avenue within a single-family neighborhood. The property is zoned R1, single-family residential, and it's a typical residential lot. The lot is 150 feet deep by 50 feet wide. It's 6,700 square feet in size. It is relatively flat, and it is currently improved with a single-family home that is located towards the front of the property and which has a 75-foot deep backyard area. Moving on to some background on the project. The variance application was originally submitted back on November 2016, following a code enforcement case that was filed on the property. The code enforcement case was a result of unpermitted improvements that were done on the property without the issuance of building permits. Specifically, a portion of the existing garage was converted into living space. This was done in order to expand the size of the existing living room. These improvements can be seen in Exhibit C, the site plan of staff's report. As part of the code enforcement case, the property owner was required to 1, remove the unpermitted improvements, or two, pull building permits to legalize the work. The property owner is hoping to pursue option number 2, of legalizing the work. However, the unpermitted improvements as they currently exist do not comply with the requirements of the Burbank Municipal Code. To the left is a picture of the home in its original condition before the unpermitted improvements. And to the right is a picture of the home with these improvements. As can be seen by looking at the garage doors to the left of the home, the garage has been reduced in width. Should the variance application be approved, the property owner would get the opportunity to pull building permits to legalize these improvements. Should the application be denied, the property owner would be required to either modify the improvements so that they comply with the Burbank Municipal Code or remove them. So when can a variance be approved? In order to approve a variance application, the planning board must establish that the required findings can be made, findings which are identified in staff's report. These findings identify that variances are appropriate when there exist unique property conditions, which deprive an owner of a right that is possessed by other property owners in the same vicinity and zone. Generally speaking, variances are intended to allow property owner the opportunity of utilizing the property in a similar manner as other similar properties, and they are seen as a last resort when a property's unique conditions make it difficult to comply with the requirements of the Burbank Municipal Code. They are not intended to grant someone a special privilege that is inconsistent with the limitations placed on other similar properties, and they are not intended to provide relief from self-created hardships. It is city staff's assessment that the required findings cannot be made for approval of the application for a variance. As identified in staff's report, when compared to other similar properties, there does not exist unique conditions with the property that 1, deprive the owner of a right that is possessed by other property owners in the same vicinity and zone, and 2, which make it difficult for the owner to comply with the requirements of the Burbank Municipal Code. As already referenced, similar to other single-family zone lots in the surrounding area, the lot at 242 North Niagara Street is 150 feet deep by 50 feet wide. It's 6,700 square feet in size. It is relatively flat, and it is currently improved with a single-family home. While staff understands why the property owner is requesting a reduction to the width of the garage, given that it would facilitate for the enlargement of the living room that currently exists, there does not exist unique conditions that warrant approval of a variance application. And more so, when reviewing the project for consistency with the required findings, again, that are required for approval, none of the 4 findings can be made. Therefore, it is city staff's assessment that the variance application cannot be approved as proposed. In conclusion, given city staff's assessment, we recommend that the planning board deny the variance application by adopting the resolution in Exhibit A of staff's report. This concludes my presentation. I'm available should there be any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Before we open up the hearing to the public, I would invite the applicant or the representative to address the planning board. You'll have a maximum time of 15 minutes to make your presentation. If there's anyone here to speak on this matter, there's a yellow card in the front. If you can just complete the yellow card and bring it up to the front. We can have the applicant.
Good evening, Chair Rosati, members of the Planning Board, and the public. Can we please get the PowerPoint up, please? My name is Josh. This is my wife, Brianna. So, after purchasing our first home in April of 2016, we took some questionable advice and went ahead and did some work without permits. We soon learned this was not the way to do things when code enforcement showed up at our house after a complaint. We were provided a list of items requiring permits, some done by us, but most of which was done by the previous owner. After this initial contact, we were educated on the correct procedure and have been 100% compliant, and I am happy to say that after architects, engineers, lots of time and money spent, we have finalized permits on our house. This is the last remaining issue. As a part of the work we did, we reduced the width of our garage from roughly 17 feet to 12 feet to provide room for a living and dining space. It has been this way since 2016. We submitted this variance application in January of 2017. Until we made this change, there was no living and dining room space in the house. As silly as that may sound, there's an explanation that is unique to this property. With 2 daughters at home, our biggest priority is family. Having a place for all of us to sit down to dinner is a must. Having a place for us to sit down and read stories before bed is essential. We can do these things now, but as you'll see, that was not always possible. So our house, 242 North Niagara Street, is located on Lot 5 of Block K of Track 6984 near Oak Street. But to get the whole picture, we must look at Lots 1, 3, and 5. Because at the time the structure that would become 242 was built, it was all of these lots were connected as one piece of property with one owner. So in 1933, Bernard Ackerman owned all these 3 connected lots and built the house at 2920 Oak Street with a detached garage at 242 Niagara. That garage over time evolved in what is now our house. Over time, different owners added on to the structure for their own specific purposes, which were all non-residential in nature. So for example, in 1942, Arno Fry added a second story to be used as a so-called rumpus room, and specified it was not for sleeping purposes. The stairs leading to this upstairs second story weren't brought inside the structure until 1976. All this to say that our house was not built by a single home builder looking to create a functional home for a single family. It was built in pieces by different owners with different visions, none of which were to make a single family home, because at the time it was a secondary structure to their property. This is the single most extraordinary circumstance in our case, and it makes our house exceptional and worthy of a variance. Similar to when lots are combined to form a planned development, we are looking for some unique treatment because when our lot was split up, it put us in a unique starting point when it came to making the home functional. As you can see, our lot line is well into our neighbor's yard on the left of the fence, and their fence still attaches to our house. And that's because when our lot was initially split up from the other 2, it was to a width of 45 feet. And after some time, 5 feet was given back to our lot. So the lot wasn't even finalized until well after the structures were built. If our house had been built by a single builder, we wouldn't be here today. We're not looking to increase the size of the living and dining space. We simply needed to create it. Differences in our house from single-family homes built at this time include the previously mentioned lack of living or dining space, no garage in the backyard, no fireplace. It's built on a slab instead of a raised foundation. The plumbing is all on the south wall like it was slapped on after the fact. There's no entryway. You sort of walk right into the kitchen. Now, I don't want to seem like we're complaining. We know what we bought, and we like our unique house. It's just we do need living and dining space, a property right that other owners in the vicinity possess. And we think we came up with a reasonable solution given all of this. So if we could take a look inside our house as it is today, please play that video. So as you walk in, this is the kitchen right here. And to the left we have the living area. And we'll just walk to the back to show you. There's 2 bedrooms back here. And that's pretty much it. The master bedroom is upstairs. And you can play this video, please. So back out to the living room. So you can see it's a bit tight. The table needs to be pushed up against the wall. The chairs sort of, slide into the living room, but it's there. We can function and eat and sort of live in this space. Go back and let that video finish out. So when we look up, you'll see this beam running across the room. That's where the garage used to end. So let's take a look what that might look like today. So you can see it would be very cramped. We have that. The table would be sort of like right here by the front door. The couch would be in the walkway/kitchen. The wall with the pictures on it would be open to the back. It's kind of like there's no place for a TV, anything like that. And we could look at other angles, what that might look like. And then now back to how it is today. So as you can see, moving the wall just 5 feet, we've allowed essential space for our family. Next, parking, which seems to be a central issue here. The most important point we can make here is that our parking situation has not changed at all. The number of off-street parking spots has remained unaffected by these improvements. At about 7 feet 9 inches wide, the previous garage could realistically only service one vehicle. It should have never been considered a two-car garage. And at about 12 feet wide, our new garage can also service one vehicle. Here's a look at our parking situation. We can reasonably park 3 cars off the street, 1 in the garage and 2 in the driveway. But if we really needed to, we could park 5 cars on our property. We understand the reason for new 2-car garages is to keep cars off the street. We are able to do our part to do just that. The general plan states that parking is one of the biggest pain points for residents and visitors to our city, but as you can see, we aren't adding to that pain. We never need to park on the street. It is very much in the culture of Burbank to park in your driveway, oftentimes in the street, to avoid tandem parking. But as it is, we have a significantly better parking situation than many in our neighborhood who park on the street on a daily basis. Aesthetically, our house fits in perfectly. These are houses across the street from us. They look very similar to ours and have 1-car garages, as do, a lot more houses in our neighborhood. The neighbors are very supportive of this, and they have signed a note stating that they don't feel this is material detrimental to the public welfare or injurious to property or improvements in the vicinity or negatively impacts the area in any way. Our house has been this way for the past 3 years, and I'm not aware of anyone being negatively affected by its current state. Furthermore, I don't think there's a need to worry about setting a negative precedent for others to have their garage reduced by 5 feet either, if we are approved. For one, houses built by a single builder were built with living space. Ours simply wasn't. And 2, if someone in Burbank has a legitimate 2-car garage, it is likely because it's a new construction, remodel, or they have it in the backyard. Either way, it would not make sense for an owner in these situations to seek to reduce the width of their garage by 5 feet to create living and dining space. So just to recap, the property history left a unique problem. There wasn't any living and dining space that would be required by a family of 4, because our house was built in pieces by different owners with different needs, none of them family. We reduced the size of our garage by 5 feet to make room for said living and dining space. The change did not affect parking, but it has had a huge impact on our life. This change only adds function and value to the house, and by extension the neighborhood and city. It has been this way for so long now, over 3 years, including more than 2.5 waiting for this hearing, that changing it back now would be extremely impractical. We've been fully compliant with the city's requests since being contacted. We own our decisions. At the end of the day, we're just trying to make it right. We're talking about 100 square feet, not much space, but due to many factors, this specific 100 square feet is quite important to our family. It's where we eat dinner, It's where we read to our girls every night before bed. It's where our youngest daughter took her first bites of food and her first steps. At this point, taking this space away will be very disruptive to our lives, especially the children. This 100 square feet should be left serving a loving family of 4, because if it is forced back behind the wall into the garage, it will be doing much less for our family, and by extension, the neighborhood and community. Because as I have mentioned, that putting that space back in the garage does nothing practical in terms of parking. This concludes our presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. We will now open up the public hearing to hear any persons in the audience who wish to speak on this matter. Each person may address the planning board for a maximum time of 5 minutes. Seeing none, would the representative of the Community Development Department like to make any further comments?
Planning board chair, no further comments. Thank you.
Thanks. Does the applicant or their representative wish to make any further comments? That's a no. Does the board have any questions for the staff or the applicant? Board member Liu?
This is for staff. Daniel, thank you for your report. Just a question in terms of if this variance was denied. I know you stated that they would either have to restore it back to the way it was or obtain permits to change it so that's up to code. What would that change be?
So as proposed, planning board member Lou, so as proposed, we wouldn't be able to, if the variance is denied, they would not be able to pursue with the improvements that they currently have. They would have to modify the proposal. That may mean having to add on to the back of the property, potentially expanding their livable area that way. Does that answer your question?
So they would have to add to the back and then restore the garage to what it was.
That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Gamboa? Board member Gamboa?
Hi, Daniel. Is there any mechanism that requires someone to park in their garage?
Planning board member Gamboa, yes, there is. So per our Birmingham Municipal Code, specifically the zoning regulations for the single-family residential zone, there is requirements that every single-family property that's built today have a 2-car garage, and that the vehicles park in there. In the case that a property was built years ago without a conforming garage, there is requirements that identify that that garage can't be reduced in size, it can't be reduced in width. However, vehicles still have to park in that garage.
But if someone doesn't use their garage for their car, does the city enforce that at all?
So I will say that growing up, I'm used to seeing vehicles parked along the driveway. I think it's fairly common for people to use their garage for things like storage in many cases, and then as a result of that, they park along the driveway. The way that our code reads, vehicle garages are required to be used for the parking of vehicles. If someone parks along the driveway, it's not necessarily a code violation. Our code allows for that to happen as part of your everyday living. However, that in itself, the ability of being able to park in a driveway does not mean that you can now convert a garage or a portion of it into something else.
To get to the question more directly, is there's nothing in the code that we'd be out there enforcing, saying you didn't park in your car, you're using a portion of it for, storage or home gym, whatever. So as long as it has the garage, then you're meeting, for better or for worse, the requirements of the R1 standard. And from our standpoint, reducing that below what's applicable under the code, it's constrained. I mean, at that point, we're looking at it from a deviation standpoint. There aren't, at least we couldn't determine from our standpoint, that there are physical conditions attributed to the physical characteristics of the property, i.e. topography, shape, design, that would preclude someone from expanding the square footage of their home to meet their personal needs while at the same time complying with the requirements of the code. If that was the case, let's say it was a pie-shaped lot, and there was really nowhere else to go but towards that area, then probably a better case could be made for the finding. But from staff standpoint, we didn't see those situations occurring where if the granting of the variance occurred under the current situation, we weren't creating a special privilege of the applicant that wouldn't otherwise be available to others that have to comply with the requirement in the R1 zone.
Sure. And then this building was built before the current code standards, correct?
The current R1 standards,
Yeah.
they probably go back quite a bit, but as far as what the dimensional requirements were, the requirement that it have 2 parking spaces. I couldn't tell you off the top of my head if in 1934 that specific requirement was in place, but as far as for single-family residential, it's pretty standard 2-car garage.
Sure. And I was there, but there's a lot of houses on this block with only 1-car garage, and there's a lot of houses in Burbank with one like a 1-car garage, correct?
Sure.
So, but by Burbank standards, this is only a 1-car garage at 17 feet because it doesn't meet the 18 or 19 feet.
Yeah, Daniel might be able to answer that question. As far as the current, how it's characterized currently at that 17-foot dimension, it was a 2-car, right?
So as of today with the current code, 19 feet would be required on the inside to create a 2-car garage. It is common throughout the city to have, we commonly have garages that are less than 19 feet wide. This is not uncommon of a situation. However, to answer your question, yes, 19 feet would be required current day for a 2-car garage.
Okay.
Question for the applicant?
Yes, sir.
So in your presentation, you showed us a couple of items that looks like the house was added on to at certain stages, but it also looked like, it was hard to tell from the pictures, but it also looked like that work was permitted.
Some was and some wasn't. In the course of this whole interaction with the city, my wife and I had to pull permits for some of the owner's past work. So as of today, everything is permitted in our home except for the garage.
But like the upstairs portion, that was permitted, right?
Yes.
Okay. So I wasn't sure if you were making the presentation that there's a lot of unpermitted stuff, so we did
Oh,
it too.
no. This is the last remaining element that needs a permit. Yeah.
So I have a question. Most people, when they add on to their house or they want to make their house bigger, they hire an architect and they add on to the back of the house, or they go up or expand whichever way they can. How come you didn't choose that route?
I think at the time, when we bought our house, we had the layout of the house, I think, lent itself to, it was sort of, I don't know, it made the most sense at the time because the kitchen being right there in the front, to push the garage wall back, that was sort of like, made the most sense. Like if we wouldn't have put the living room in the backyard and left the kitchen in the front, it's sort of just like efficiency wise, like it,
I mean,
it sort
I
of made
understand that's
most
the easiest and cheapest way to
sense.
go,
Sure.
but did you look into having an architect look at the house and give you some ideas on how to expand it properly?
No, we were first time home buyers, and we got some questionable advice, and we took it,
Sure.
and here we are.
Okay, I understand.
Yeah.
Does anyone have any questions for the applicant? Anyone for the applicant while he's here? No? Oh, go ahead. Board Member Hadian. Sir?
You have been living in the house since the time you purchased the house,
Yes.
so it hasn't been rented?
No.
Thank you.
Well, since you're here,
Okay. Yeah.
what other
Please.
changes did you make other than the garage?
Yeah. So after we moved in, we put in new floors, and the kitchen was a disaster. We brought that up to code, and sort of remodeled that. New carpeting, paint, new water heater, new electrical panel, both permitted.
You mentioned some other work that was not permitted. You
Yes, so the
obtained
previous-
permits. What were those?
So the previous owner had shifted some walls in the back, and I think upstairs. So we had once we were notified of that, because code enforcement came to our house and we let them come in and look around and take photos or whatever, and then they came back and said, like, this is what we have on file, this is different. And this was like right when we bought the house. So we're like, okay. And so, you know, we did have at that point, sort of once we were notified, like right after we moved in, we did have an architect draw up the house in its current state. I think the plans are provided. So he drew it up as is, and you know, we got it all legal and on file with the city, and you know, inspected and permitted. There was just one sort of bubbled out space on the plan where the garage is, saying this is being taken care of under a separate permit. This variance. The rest was handled under a combo permit. Yeah.
Board Member Hadian?
How many cars you're parking right now? One?
Two.
Two? And you're planning to live in this house for a long time. So
We are, yeah.
you're expecting 2 more cars within.
Well, you know, our girls are 3
10,
and 5, so by the time, you know, they have cars, that's possible.
Another question. Did you ever think of doing an accessory dwelling unit, ADU?
Yeah, I don't think our house qualifies for that. Daniel and I discussed that at one point when those rules changed a year or 2 ago. I don't think it meets. I don't think our house or our lot meets the requirement for that.
Thank you.
Any other questions for staff or the applicant?
Steph,
Board Member Alticanian?
if they need to put it back, would they have to make it 19 feet or the original 17 feet 9 inches
Planning board member, they would have to make it 17 feet 9 inches.
as it was originally?
Correct.
And what is the FAR as it stands?
The FAR as it stands, we can look at the project plans, get them.
Easy for you to say, you can see it, I can't.
Planning board member?
Yes.
The plan showed that it'd be at 37%.
Currently, it's at 37%?
Correct. So on this property, the maximum allowed FAR would be 40%.
So it would be difficult to expand it to the rear.
There would be allowances to do that. They could expand likely a couple hundred square feet, but it wouldn't be a significant size expansion. And the reason for that is the size of the lot itself. The lot is roughly 6,700 square feet in size. When you have a lot of that size and an FAR 0.4, you have less square footage you can build.
I'm having trouble with this.
The house is 16
the-
square feet,
the
and the
fi-
lot's 6,750.
Right, so you have 2,200 square foot house,
Let me calculate it really quick.
Yeah,
What's on the
that's
plan
Yeah,
may be
incorrect.
if
a
we
little-
could.
How much? Yeah, it's 22%.
So just for the record, after running the numbers and calculating it ourselves, the number was 22%.
Yeah.
Sorry about the
Okay.
error.
So it's fair to say there's more than 100 square feet that can be added. I mean, we're talking almost another 40% maybe on top of that. It's up to 0.4, right?
It's up to 0.4. They have 22%. You're right. It'd be more than a couple hundred square feet.
They, Deputy City Planner Scott Planback, they can add approximately an additional 1,100 square feet
Yeah.
of square footage on the house.
Okay.
Yeah, they can bring it up to almost 2,700 square feet.
And the rear of the property, the buildable area, not that they max out the whole thing, but there's another 60 feet of depth from the back face of that building all the way to the required rear yard setback of 15 feet. So
Yeah.
there's some space back there.
Any other questions for staff or the applicant? Board Member Hadian?
For staff, why isn't this property qualified for ADU?
So to be able to qualify for an ADU, you have to meet our ADU regulations, which were adopted a little over a year ago by the city council. And those regulations require that when you convert your garage into an ADU, that you provide parking in specific parts of the property. For example, this parking could be uncovered, however, it has to be behind the front elevation of the home. The parking, in addition to that, there's specific requirements of where the home could be placed on the lot or where the ADU can be placed on the lot with respect to the main dwelling unit itself. So there was a couple of the requirements that were not met. And because of that, this wasn't a candidate for an ADU.
So it's not by choice. This property was not qualified for having ADU just because of the parking configuration?
Correct. It does not qualify for an ADU given that it would not comply with our requirements if they were to convert that garage into an ADU. However, in speaking with the applicant, the want, in essence, was to have a larger living room. Creating an ADU would allow for additional living space, but it would be in a different form than an expansion to the living room.
Board Member Liu?
I believe the applicant has some
Come on up.
other comments, so I'd like to hear them.
I just have one thing regarding the FAR and the depth, et cetera. I just want to make sure it's being calculated with the right numbers. In the presentation, it showed my lot as being 50 by 150, and it's 50 by 135. So,
But you can still add a significant portion onto your house.
sure.
Yeah.
I mean, I just wanted to make sure the numbers were being run with the right, figures. Thank you.
Any other questions for staff for the applicant?
Staff, last question. There was a mention about other houses in the neighborhood just having one parking garage. Are they non-conforming, or did anyone look into how those came into being? Was it originally built as a one-car garage, and is that why they just have one-car garage?
Planning board members, so as part of staff's analysis, we did look into the existing homes. One of them is directly across the street from the subject property, and those are non-conforming. They're legal non-conforming given that at the time that they were built with building permits in that configuration with the one-car garage. If they came in right now and said, "City, we want to reduce our garage in width a little bit more because we have, say, it's 13 feet and we want 11 feet," our response to them would be no. They would not be able to reduce it any further given that our code places that restriction on non-conforming structures.
But I guess there was a determination made that it was non-conforming but legal. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Thank you.
Board Member Hadi?
I have one question. What's the maximum number of parkings required for maximum floor area? If they yield the actual 40%, they still need to provide 2 parking spots? Two
So-
covered?
You are correct. The way that the code reads right now, 2 covered spaces would be required unless the home was to go above 3,400 square feet in size, which wouldn't be possible in this case. But if that was the case, if it was to go over that square footage, a 3-car garage would be required at that point. But in this case, 2 covered parking spaces.
So if this house was actually 37 or the 40% of the lot size, and they did have a 2-car garage, but they still had enough area to add ADU, they would have provided the one parking spot on the driveway for the ADU, which in this case they cannot provide ADU. But what would happen to the parking space required for the ADU?
So, so not to go too far off tangent.
Yeah, let me just say we're not having an ADU conversation because that's not part of what was
I
brought
know.
in front of us. If the applicant comes back with potential ADU, we can discuss it, but we can't get off topic because that's not what's in front of us tonight, the ADU.
To guess, to figure out the total number of parking spaces required per single family in R1 zone, it's 3, isn't it? It's
No.
2 and and then one required per
So
ADU.
depending on whether they hit that threshold that that the senior planner Daniel Villa noted, 3 for the house, and if you had an ADU, let's just say, that'd be another parking space. But there are a lot of factors, like if you're within a half mile of
Transit zone.
then you can forego it. So that could be provided with uncovered parking. Our code says it has to be behind the residential structure, so we'd have to deal with that. But if you're within a certain distance, you may not even, you can forego the parking space altogether. So there's a lot of potential what if scenarios, but the reality of it is that based on the buildable area of the property, it looks like a 2-car garage at any point in time, even if they max the square footage, would be what they're required. And they could, of course, provide additional overflow parking. It looks like they have the depth of it to provide that in front. The big question is you have a development standard in front of you that requires 2 parking spaces and also sets a threshold of dimensions. In this particular request, you have an applicant that's making a request of you to deviate from both the number and the dimensional requirements for that parking space. And that's a question in front of the board. Based on the findings that are required to be made, do they meet all the required findings, including those physical constraints attributed to the lot, the dimensions of the lot? And is that atypical of what's applicable to other similarly zoned properties? Because the reality of it is at some point, when we start applying the variance that's site-specific and saying, well, others have it, I think we're starting to veer a little bit away from the fact that are there physical characteristics applicable to the property that are not applicable to others that could put them at a level lower than their neighbors? Or are they at a level that is also applicable, a constraint to their neighbors as a development standard that they have to abide by? Because if that's the case, then is there the potential to create a special circumstance where now you're raising them above what the constraints are of their neighbors? So I just want to make sure to kind of bring that back to it. And I don't know if the city attorney wants to chime in beyond that, but I think that's the issue at hand is the situation on this particular property so different from other R1 zone properties that it warrants approval of the variance? And it becomes, for better or for worse, almost a checklist type of a configuration on whether you can check off all the findings and approve it.
I would concur with Mr. Ramirez. The variance findings are fairly strict. They're articulated in the code, and the code says before variance may be granted, it shall be shown by the board that these following findings must be made. The applicant provided findings they believe you could make. Staff has provided the findings that they reached in going through the analysis. So the discussion is really limited as to whether you can make those findings or not.
Board Member Gamboa.
Is there any old permits or city documents that refer to this as a 2-car garage?
Planning Board Member Gamboa, there are. The applicant actually showed one in his presentation that identified a structure in the corner of the screen as a 2-car garage, and it was this garage that was identified.
What was that, the floor plan, or was it a permit or something that was deemed that this is a 2-car garage at one point?
So I think what Daniel's referring to is in the presentation, when the lots were all combined, lots 1, 3, and 5 were one property. There was a 2-car garage, 242 Niagara. That was the garage of 2920 Oak Street. And so back then, it started out as a garage for that house that was on Oak. And then over time, it got built up and added onto. The lot got split off. And then it was kind of just like, here's kind of what's left over. And was sort of arbitrarily.
So the 2-car garage on that lot became the 2-car garage on your house?
Part of the 2-car garage that serviced 2920 Oak became the entire garage that was 242 Niagara serviced 2920 Oak. And then over time that got added on, like there was like a kitchen got added on like to the garage and like a room in the back. And so that became a house essentially. So like, in my opinion, like the dimensions were arbitrary. Like at one point it was, I think it started out as like a 20 by 20 box, and then it sort of got chipped at kitchen, bathroom. Okay, now this is a house, and it also has it has its garage, but that's when it was, that's how it came into existence. So.
Daniel, do you have anything to say?
Yes, and adding on to that, there are other building permits on record. One more recently, I believe, from 2007, 2009, in which I'm assuming it's a previous property owner because I believe the Walkers purchased a home in 2015, 2016. So 2017 or 2007, 2009, around that area, the previous owner actually proposed improvements to the home to add on to the second story, to add on towards the back of the property. And at that time, they showed existing conditions of the garage. They identified it as a two-car garage. When looking at previous permit history with the code enforcement department, because they had to look at building permit records that date back to when the property was first permitted, there was consistent dimensions that this was 19 feet wide, and I can't remember the depth of it. However, did it say two-car garage? It didn't. However, it did show those dimensions, which, again, our code currently requires us to maintain those dimensions, given that what we don't want is to increase a nonconformity. In essence, we going from a 17-foot, 9-inch garage to something less than that. Because again, that would result in increasing the nonconformity and limiting even further limiting potential parking of vehicles in that space.
Thank you. Any other questions for staff or the applicant? Seeing none, I now declare the hearing closed. What is the planning board's pleasure? I'll just lead off and say, not maybe this board, but we've seen this quite a bit where somebody feels like there's a hardship and they want to convert a garage space into a living space. And to me, it has really nothing to do about parking. It's about inhabiting a garage with no permits, not safe. And in this case specifically, there really isn't a hardship. You got a 6750 lot where you can do anything in the world you want on based on the FAR. So there's not really a hardship if you add on to the house properly. Obviously, this is what I do for a living, as many of you know. And this house isn't like any other house I've seen in Burbank. I think once you start allowing people to convert garages for living space, it's a slippery slope. And we've had other applicants with much more hardship than this one, and we adhere to our code. And I can't make the findings for a variance. So, Board Member Liu?
So this one was difficult for me because I drove by the house in the neighborhood, and the house literally looks like it fits the neighborhood with the improvements. I think for me, I can find for the variance. I think it was the first one in terms of the exceptional, extraordinary circumstances that was hard for me to find until applicant provided the information that this building is essentially different from all the other buildings on that block and was a garage. And so, he's had to do certain things to it to make it habitable or more habitable for his family. And so I can find that because of the history of this building, that there was an exceptional or extraordinary circumstance for him. In regards to the enjoyment of the property, item 2, again, I get that the others are legal, non-conforming in terms of the single-car garages. I think that this building does not stick out to me. It seems like, if anything, he's making it seem more alike to the neighboring houses who don't have the double-car garage. And 3 and 4, in terms of the variance findings, are really based on parking. And and all the neighbors are parking in their driveway, and on the street. I don't see that anyone actually is actually using their garages as for parking, and I think that in this circumstance, I can find that that he also meets the 3 and 4. There's no public comment against this variance. In fact, he has support from his neighbors, and that would be something that would weigh heavily against me finding against this variance, and I just don't see it. So in that case, I am for the variance and would vote for it.
I'd like to
Board
add
Member Gamboa?
that in addition to the findings 3 and 4, where you're unlikely to actually use that for a parking space because, as by Burbank's definition, it's not a legal parking space. It's not wide enough. So in many ways, it's an oversized one-car garage that's non-conforming. That's still an oversized one-car garage at 12 feet. So we're creating more space for people and families in Burbank to enjoy the city, enjoy their home, as opposed to space for stuff like Christmas decorations or whatever that aren't people, that aren't cars. So I think that the findings 3 and 4 don't quite, as presented, meet the muster for me. So I think there's room for the variance, or even considering that's not a variance because just an oversized one-car garage is non-conforming. Obviously, that's not the letter of the law, the letter of the rules here, but I think that's why we have a planning board to kind of consider what's between the letters.
Board Member Hadia?
I also drove by and looked at all of the properties from Olive all the way to Vertigo, and most of the properties either do not have a parking on the front or they're single car garage. And I only noticed 5 properties with standard 2-car garage, and one of them was actually demolition, so 4 properties. And when we're looking at the variance, we're talking about exceptional circumstances, being unusually shaped properties, drastic change in property topography, and or unusual site design. In this situation, I think it's an unusual site situation because they will not be able to have an ADU. Most of the houses probably will not be able, and the maximum square footage that they can add at the back, if they decided to expand the building, wouldn't be more than a couple of 100 square foot.
That's incorrect.
How many square foot was the
They can make this house almost 2,700 square feet.
And
So there's no hardship in any way, shape, or form. This is a standard Burbank lot, standard size, standard shape. That is completely not correct. They can add on almost 1,000 square feet to this house if they want.
So my concern wasn't just this house, assuming that the variance moves forward. The problem is not just approving the variance now, it's what happens after. Then all of the properties with 1-car garage will, or with non-conforming 2-car garage will come back and probably add to the properties and changing the entire zoning for the area. And what I noticed, that the most of the houses on this street have relatively smaller front setback, which already means that the entire driveway is covered with cars. So as much as I would love to approve the variance, what happens after approving it is becoming a challenge for city and zoning code. So I move forward with reversing the variance, approving the going with the resolution as proposed.
I'm sorry, do you agree with the staff's findings?
Yes.
Okay. Board Member Atikanian.
It may seem draconian to deny a family the ability to expand their home and enjoy their home. But several factors lend me to believe that in this instance, what we have here is better to ask forgiveness than to ask for permission. So, in that sense, I'm somewhat, I guess, I like to agree with the occupant and say, well, go ahead, live your life, enjoy. But at the same time, if that's the approach, how do we deal with the next situation that comes along? What would make this so unique that we would have to look at the situation in a manner in which we say, that's okay if you don't follow the rules? I was looking for a unique and special circumstance to agree with applicant. As much as I looked at it, I could not find one. You have a flat lot, 50 by 135, 6,750 square feet, 1,516 square foot structure on it. At 40%, the applicant would be able to add about 1,100 square feet onto his home without any issue, without a variance, without any other than just a regular permitting process. And in this instance, he's basically just adding about 100 some square feet to his residence. Now, I don't want to speculate, but it seems that the circumstance lends itself to, well, this would be the easiest and the least expensive way I can add to my home, and hopefully I'll be able to keep it. I'm not able to make the finding number 1 where it says there are exceptional or extraordinary circumstances or conditions. There's nothing exceptional, nothing extraordinary, and definitely there aren't any circumstances or conditions that would have prevented this applicant from adding to the back of the property and still enjoying his property. Now, whether the kitchen is in the front, well, that lends itself to a design. Put the kitchen in the back. When the property was purchased, I'm sure they looked at it, they looked at the layout, they looked at the setup, and perhaps should have consulted with someone. But even without consultation, any changes, anyone knows that if you want to make changes to a structure, any structure, it's best to check with the local authorities to see if those are permitted or what requirements you would need to satisfy in order to be able to make them. It's a difficult situation because on one side, dealing with a family, and we're dealing with the practicality of the situation. Sure, this is great, just let's extend it a few feet. And as my colleague, Mr. Gamboa, pointed out, well, it's 17 feet 9 inches originally when they purchased it. 1 car garage, car and a half. It doesn't lend itself to 2 cars. So it's still a 1 car garage, 12 feet. But at the end of the day, we need to deal with the code. And I agree with him. As planning board, we're here to maybe slightly bend the rules. I wouldn't say bend the rules, but for matter of speaking, find situations where we're able to fix or come up with a solution. But if these are the findings that we need to make, 1 through 4, I'm not able to make the first 2. As persuasive as the applicant's history of the property was, there's thousands of homes in any city that go through all those changes. That still doesn't make it right to come in and make the change and say, well, previously all these changes were made and so forth and so on, so that gives me the right to make this change. So I guess that was a long-about way of saying that I'm not able to make the findings, specifically 1 and 2, but I wanted to lay the foundation and give the basis for as to why, so that in the event that this matter is appealed, that proper consideration is given for all the factors.
I'm just going to add on, I don't see the benefit in downzoning a property even further. So if again, it's a slippery slope. If the next door neighbor has a 2-car garage and now they want to make it a 1-car garage because they want some of it to be a living space, do we now go and make the whole neighborhood non-conforming? Again, once you do something like this, it tends to kind of snowball, and I think it's important, and that's why we have, our building codes. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, anyone care to make the appropriate motion?
I'd like to propose a resolution of the Planning Board of the City of Burbank denying project number 16-0007126 for a variance application requesting a reduction in the size of an approved garage from 17 feet 9 inches in width to 11 feet 4 inches in width, and a request to allow 1 covered parking space instead of 2 covered parking spaces.
We have a motion.
I can second it.
We have a second. Any more discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Anyone abstaining? Anyone against?
Against.
We got 2 noes, 3 yeses. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, could you please clarify for the record who voted on which side?
So we have Board Member Hadian as an aye, Board Member Atukanian as an aye. I voted aye, yes, and then Mr. Gamboa, no, and Board Member Liu, no.
Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to item number 2, conditional use permit, including administrative use permit for 224 East Olive Avenue. This is the time and place for hearing on project number 18-0006088 concerning an application for the conditional use permit, including administrative use permit to allow a new 4,107 square foot restaurant and drinking establishment in conjunction with a Type 47 alcohol license within existing building area at 224 East Olive Avenue. The applicant is Daniel Olivas, and the project site is located in downtown Burbank. Before we begin, do any planning board members have any legal or other conflict of interest regarding this hearing?
No.
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 No. Have any planning board members had any communications, including written, oral, with the applicant or the applicant's representative or any other person?
No.
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 No. Mr. Ramirez, have the notices as required by law been given?
Yes, they have.
Are there any written communications on this matter?
No, there were none for this particular item. Yes.
Will the representative of the Community Development Department please introduce yourself and summarize the matter for us?
Chairperson Rosati, they're trying to reboot the computer so we can have the presentation. If we just get a minute.
Sure.
Thank you.
Good evening, Chair Rizzotti and members of the Planning Board. My name is Shipra Rajesh, Associate Planner with the City of Burbank. Could I have the presentation? Thank you. I'm here to present a request for a conditional use permit, including administrative use permit, to allow a new 4,107 square feet restaurant/drinking establishment in conjunction with Type 47 alcohol license within existing building area at 224 East Olive Avenue. The proposed restaurant/drinking establishment use includes non-incidental sale of beer, wine, and distilled spirits for on-site consumption only. Per Burbank Municipal Code, non-incidental sale and consumption of alcohol does not limit the establishment's gross sales revenue from food sales to 65% and does not restrict the area of the establishment devoted primarily to the sale and consumption of alcohol to 15%. The project site is located within downtown Burbank area and is zoned BCC1 for Burbank Center Commercial Retail Professional Zone. This slide talks about the approvals that are required for the proposed establishment. Per section 10-1-1116 of Burbank Municipal Code, a restaurant/drinking establishment use within BCC1 zone requires approval of a conditional use permit. Per section 10-1-1407.1, all new restaurants/drinking establishments in downtown Burbank shall conform to the requirements of city's administrative use permit. The code allows merging of the AUP and CUP processes to one CUP when a restaurant requires both AUP and CUP. This is the zoning map, which shows the zoning of the project site. As specified before, the project is zoned Burbank Center Commercial Retail Professional Zone. Directly to the north, south, and west are BCC1 and BCC2 zoned properties that contain commercial services, including retail stores, restaurants, and office uses. To the east are PD 2002-1 zoned properties, which contain mixed-use development, including residential, retail, and restaurant uses. This is the aerial view of the project site. The project is located at the intersection of East Olive Avenue and South San Fernando Boulevard. As a part of the CUP, the applicant is proposing tenant improvements to upgrade existing tenant space, which includes reconfiguration of interior building walls and installation of kitchen equipment. On the exterior, the applicant is proposing new exterior finishes, such as brick veneer, aluminum siding, and new paint to highlight the entrance into the establishment. This slide shows the picture of existing tenant space. The space is located at the basement of the building at 224 East Olive Avenue. In this slide, we can see the two entrances to the establishment, which is accessible from the first floor of the building. The entrances are located along East Olive Avenue. This is a rendering of proposed tenant space after all the upgrades have been done. Here, the first picture is of the existing entrance, and the second and third picture shows the proposed entrance after upgrades, which includes new paint, widening of the entrance, brick veneer, and aluminum siding along the ceiling. This is the site plan of the project site. The project site has been highlighted in red, and the tenant space located at the basement of the building is highlighted in yellow. The red arrows indicate ADA accessible pathway, which leads to the elevator entrance of the establishment. This is the floor plan of the proposed establishment. The area in blue represents the dining area. Area in green is the kitchen. Orange represents the bar area, and yellow is the reception. There are two entrances to the proposed restaurant/drinking establishment, which is accessible from the first floor of the building. The main entrance is located near the reception area, as indicated on the floor plan with those arrows, and the elevator entrance is located on the other side of the tenant space, which is also indicated on the floor plan. The proposed establishment will operate from 11:30 a.m. to 11 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and 11:30 a.m. to 1 a.m. on Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays. Serving of alcohol would stop 30 minutes before closing time. As of now, the tenants of the proposed restaurant/drinking establishment is not known. However, any future tenant would be required to operate within the operational characteristics as conditionally approved by the Planning Board. In identifying compliance with the applicable requirements, city staff made the following findings. Project complies with the applicable Burbank Municipal Code zoning regulation specified in section 10-1-1116 of Burbank Municipal Code. The project is located within downtown parking district and provides code compliant parking. The proposed establishment will be compatible with other uses in the surrounding area. The project site is a commercial property and is surrounded by other commercial properties. The proposed use is complementary to the other existing uses in the downtown area. Additionally, the project complies with all the findings required for approval of a CUP and an AUP. It is staff's assessment that the project complies with the Burbank Municipal Code zoning regulation and AUP and CUP requirements. Planning staff recommends the Planning Board approve the project by adopting the following motion. A resolution of the Planning Board of the City of Burbank approving project number 18-0006088, a request for a conditional use permit, including administrative use permit to allow a new 4,107 square foot restaurant/drinking establishment in conjunction with type 47 alcohol license within existing building area at 224 East Olive Avenue. That concludes my presentation. Staff will be available to answer any questions.
Thank you. Before we open up the hearing to the public, I would invite the applicant or their representative to address the planning board. You will have a maximum time of 15 minutes to make your presentation.
Good evening, planning board members. I'll keep this brief. My name is Daniel Olivas. I'm the applicant and representative of SAA Interiors and Architecture. And we're here to present this proposed project in a way to bring an attraction to the city of Burbank. There's this recent trend in gastropubs and creating these very likable, intimate spaces. And so in doing this within the basement of the building, we believe we can create that atmosphere. And not only will it attract, communities within Burbank, something like this, gets out to social media and all the outlets through all those facets can bring outside communities, neighboring cities to this unique attraction in which we're trying to create here. And with that said, I'll pass my time to...
Good evening, board members. Neil Brower of Jeffrey Mangels, representing the applicant. Had a couple of requested changes to the conditions of approval, specifically conditions 7A, 7E, and 7F, pertaining to live entertainment. We'd like to modify those to permit live entertainment, but we're fine with no dancing and we're fine with no amplified music. We'd like to be able to have some music in the space, something along the lines really of acoustic guitar, piano, those sorts of things. And so what we would propose is to strike the last sentence of condition 7A, live entertainment is not allowed, to modify condition 7E that says dance floor, that amplified live entertainment and dance floor are not allowed, and to modify 7F to read music shall be limited to acoustic instruments and non-DJ recorded music. And with that, I'm just here to answer any further questions.
Can you repeat that?
Certainly. Condition 7A, modify the last sentence, which now reads live entertainment is not allowed, to say amplified live entertainment is not allowed. Condition 7E, amplified live entertainment and a dance floor are not allowed. In condition 7F, music shall be limited to acoustic instruments and non-DJ recorded music. Thank you.
Does that conclude your presentation?
It concludes my presentation.
All right.
Here to
Thank
answer
you.
any questions.
We will now open up the hearing from any persons in the audience who wish to speak on this matter. Each person may address the planning board for a maximum time of 3 minutes. So, Neil Brower, that was you? And Mr. Olivas? Yeah, so you guys spoke already. Thank you. Any other person wish to speak on this matter? Seeing none, would the representative of the Community Development Department like to make any further comments?
Yes, Chair Risotti. Per definition of a drinking establishment / restaurant use, the applicant will not be allowed to have a dance floor in their establishment. What they proposed was a restaurant / drinking establishment use, which by the definition per section 10-1-203 of the code does not allow dance floor.
I don't think that they want a dance floor. I think they want some acoustic music. Is that what you said?
That's correct. No dance floor, only acoustic music.
So they just want acoustic music. You want to think about that for a second?
I can chime in.
I'm sorry?
I can chime in, Chairperson.
Yeah.
On this one. So, we're if the board so desires, I think we're okay with non-amplified music to happen there and limit it to that, so that we don't have a situation where these things kind of grow beyond that. So there's some limitations just based on acoustics. So as long as that's inclusive of when we say amplified sound, we're also talking about microphones and whatnot.
Understood. Just,
Okay.
want to point out too that we're talking about a basement space. This isn't a space that's going to be open to the street where sound is going to be spilling out.
That's fine. We're fine with the request.
All right. Thank you. Would the representative of the Community Department, do you have any other comments or questions?
No, Chair Risotti.
No. And the applicant, do you have any further comments? Seeing none, that's a no. Does the board have any questions for the staff or the applicant? Mr. Hatakanian?
I only have a question. I just want clarification as to what was the final consensus or agreement as to the music. Is the wording going to be non-amplified? Is that the proposed wording?
So in 7A, the last sentence would be amplified live entertainment is not allowed. On 7E, amplified live entertainment and dance floor are not allowed. And then on F, music shall be limited to acoustic instrument, non-DJ pre-recorded background music. So basically, acoustic music would be allowed, inclusive of like a piano. If someone was going to play piano, they could do that.
Okay. I have a question for staff. Just what was in this place before this restaurant pulled the permit?
So previously, this place was vacant. It has been vacant for years. I'm not sure how many years. The property owner informed that it used to be part of Burbank Prison, but that's, I think the applicant might be more aware of what it was before, but it has been vacant for a long time.
Yeah, it's an interesting space. Okay.
Just Chair, so you're aware, in the past, we have had inquiries regarding use of the space. Anything from basically like exercise studios to kind of a mix of entertainment spaces. This most recent request, we looked at within the context of what's allowed under the zoning code within the downtown. And I wouldn't characterize it exactly the way the applicant did, but I think there's a niche type of use that limits because of the space configuration. This particular one that's being proposed with its both restaurant and drinking establishment, we felt one was that we felt comfortable recommending to you for consideration of approval, just because it basically adds to the downtown nightlife in the area.
I mean, I was a little concerned about the ingress and egress of a basement like this, but there's 52 conditions of approval, and I can tell you the police department and the fire department are going to do their job, so.
And the building code, actually.
And the building code.
Building codes actually may adjust some expectations when it comes to accessibility. Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions for staff or the applicant? Board Member Gamboa?
Am I correct in understanding that there's no tenant yet? It's a kind of a concept, right?
It's what we would call a spec build. Basically, they're getting the entitlements, and then they're going to basically look for a prospective tenant.
So then that would mean a tenant wouldn't have to come back here.
That means that the tenant would have to abide by the conditions of approval. Unless they sought to modify them, then they would come back to you.
Okay. And as a quick aside, we're on the topic of amplified music. I'd like to get that in downtown Burbank as a whole, the outside, no amplified music. But thank you.
Sure.
Board Member Liu?
In regards to the amplified music, I just want to ask the applicant, if you're, okay, I understand no application of musical instruments, but if you're going to have anybody singing, they're going to be amplified to be heard over over the whatever piano playing, guitar playing, and over the crowd. So I see that A allows for singing of vocal sounds that be kept at a level so as not to cause a disturbance. So I know, Fred, that you were saying that there's no mic, like if you're saying non-amplified, no mic. So if you ever want to expand to anybody singing, you may want to keep that in mind.
Understand. I think it's really more about providing ambient music that sets a tone rather than having live performances on a regular basis.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions for staff or the applicant? Board Member Hadian?
What's the name of the establishment?
We don't have a name yet. And part of the reason we don't have a tenant is that there have been discussions with potential tenants, but nobody really wants to talk to us until we can show them that we have the entitlement.
But it's mainly a restaurant.
Restaurant and drinking establishment, yes. But it can't just be a pure bar.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none, I now declare the hearing closed. What is the planning board's pleasure? Or motion? Board Member Liu?
I find this use of this space to be great and very supportive of bringing a new business into this location, and I'm happy to make a motion at this point.
I'd say do it.
Okay. I move that the planning board adopt a resolution of the planning board of the city of Burbank approving project number 18-0006088, a request for a conditional use permit, including administrative use permit, to allow a new 4,107 square foot restaurant drinking establishment in conjunction with Type 47 alcohol license within existing building area at 224 East Olive Avenue.
As amended?
As amended.
For the acoustical element?
To amend item 7 as
Yep.
noted. Yes.
We have a first.
Second.
We have a second. Any comments? I'm just going to say I'm comfortable with this, the findings and the 52 conditions of approval to move forward. Any other comments? All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 And Chairperson, just can we? I think this will be kind of an ongoing thing moving forward. Could we get Griselda? Could we get a roll call vote just to make sure we go through?
Are we doing roll call now?
So there's a provision in the Brown Act that requires reporting of the vote of each member. When it's unanimous, it's fairly easy, but quite often if there's one or two,
Yeah.
it makes it a little more difficult.
Okay.
So.
So why don't you do the roll call? This will be fun.
Board Member Gamboa,
Aye.
Board Member Liu,
Aye.
Chair Rosati,
Yes.
Board Member Atikunian,
Aye.
Board Member Hadian.
Aye.
So we have 5 yeses. Anyone abstaining and anyone against? Obviously, no. Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on, project number 3, item number 3, project number 18-0001356, conditional use permit, 1419 West Olive Avenue. This is the time and the place for hearing on project number 18-0001356 concerning an application for conditional use permit allowing the incidental sale of consumption of beer in conjunction with an existing restaurant, Philly's Best. The project is located at 1419 West Olive Avenue. Before we begin, do any planning board members have any legal or other conflict of interest regarding this hearing?
No.
No.
Nope.
No. Have any planning board members had any communications, including written, oral, with the applicant or the applicant's representative or any other person?
No.
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 Mr. Ramirez, have the notices as required by law been given?
Yes, they have.
Are there any written communications on this matter?
There were 2 written communications that were left on your dais regarding this particular request.
Thank you. Will the representative of the Community Development Department please introduce yourself and summarize the matter for us?
Good evening, Chair Rosati and members of the board. My name is Marcial Medina, and I'm an assistant planner with the Planning Division. I am here today to present to you the proposed conditional use permit for the property located at 1419 West Olive Avenue. The applicant applying for the conditional use permit is Philly's Best, which is an existing restaurant. Philly's Best is requesting a CUP to be permitted to sell beer in conjunction with the restaurant. The project is located within a mini mall located at 1419 West Olive Avenue and is located in a parcel zone C2 Commercial Limited Business. The applicant requesting the conditional use permit is Philly's Best, which is a full-service sit-down restaurant. Within the same mini mall structure, there is one other structure, a restaurant, and 2 retail uses. Each of these uses share the parking lot that is located within this mini mall parcel. The applicant is requesting approval of a conditional use permit to be allowed to sell beer as an incidental use to the existing restaurant. As part of this request, neither the exterior nor interior of the building will be modified to accommodate the sale of beer. The Burbank Municipal Code limits restaurants with incidental alcohol sales to no more than 35% of the total revenue to come from alcohol sales. This limitation is intended to ensure that the restaurant continues to operate as a restaurant and ensures that the sale of alcohol is truly incidental. Philly's Best is located within a tenant space that is 1,782 square feet and functions like a full sit-down restaurant. The request for a CUP would not require an alteration of the current layout of the restaurant, and there will not be a space or area dedicated to the sale or consumption of beer. The inclusion of alcohol sales would be incidental to the existing restaurant and will not significantly alter the way the restaurant currently operates. The slide being shown is a map that calls out the location of the establishments with alcohol licenses that allow for on-site sales that are located within the same census tract as Philly's Best. As the map indicates, many of the establishments are located at a distance from Philly's Best. The closest establishment with on-site consumption is located 1,550 feet away, and the furthest establishment is located 4,842 feet away. The majority of the establishments with on-site sales are located more than 2,000 feet away from Philly's Best, meaning that there is a capacity for a restaurant with incidental alcohol sales that could serve the neighborhood surrounding the project site. A parking variance has been previously approved for this property, which requires the parking lot across the street, which contains a Chase Bank, Centinela Feed and Pet Supplies, Sauce Shoes, and a Cosmoprof to share its parking spaces to the patrons visiting Philly's Best. Because the incidental nature of the sale of beer, it can be assumed that there will not be a significant increase in patrons as to cause a negative impact to the surrounding area. Staff received 2 comments from the public in regards to the project. Conditions have been placed on the project in order to mitigate any potential impacts that the inclusion of the sale of beer will have on the surrounding area. The restaurant staff is required to complete a serve-safe alcohol safety program that ensures proper practices of the sales of beer. Also, a condition has been placed strictly prohibiting that the sale and consumption occur. Prohibiting the sale and consumption occurring outside of the restaurant. Failure on the applicant's behalf to enforce this requirement could cause revocation of the CUP. Staff has determined that the conditional use permit to allow Philly's Best to have the incidental sales of beer in conjunction with a sit-down restaurant is consistent with the zoning code and will have a minimal impact to the surrounding area. Therefore, staff recommends the Planning Board approve a resolution of the Planning Board of the City of Burbank approving project number 18-000-1356, a request for a conditional use permit allowing incidental on-site sale and consumption of beer in conjunction with an existing sit-down restaurant located at 1419 West Olive Avenue, based on the findings of fact and subject to the recommended conditions of approval. This concludes my presentation. I'm available for questions after. Thank you.
Thank you. Before we open up the hearing to the public, I would invite the applicant or the representative to address the planning board. You will have a maximum time of 15 minutes to make your presentation.
Good evening, Chairperson and Board. I'll be brief. I'm Michael Schiff, my wife Monique. We've owned a home here in Burbank for 15 years and have owned and operated Philly's Best, a cheesesteak shop here in Burbank, for the last 12 years. This is Terrell Barker. She's our manager, and she's been our manager for the last 11 years. We're applying for a conditional use permit to sell beer in our shop to accompany our cheesesteaks. Maybe some of you have been there. If you had been, you could attest to the fact that a beer would be the perfect accompaniment to our food. Monique and I are hands-on operators of the restaurant. One of us is in the store 6 out of 7 days a week. Terrell is there 6 days a week and lives directly across the street. In addition to our presence in the shop, we have surveillance cameras which can be monitored from our home and on our phones. We are constantly aware of all activity in the store. In addition, as stated in the staff's report, all employees will be required to take a serve-safe alcohol safety program paid for by us. It's important to us that our employees are trained on how to check IDs, spot fake IDs, and not overserve. Not that we think our customers are planning to overdo it. We have countless regular customers who tell us how much they would love if they could get a beer with their cheesesteak. We're not looking to become a bar that sells beer. We're not looking to become a bar that happens to sell sandwiches. Rather, a sandwich shop that sells beer with its great food. Since 70% of our sales are during lunch hours, with a lot of professionals and entertainment industry people coming in for a bite and heading back to work, we're quite confident that people won't be consuming large amounts of beer. Again, just an accompaniment to a great sandwich. We don't feel the customer volume will increase because of beer sales, so traffic patterns and volume in the parking lot will not be affected. Our hours will not change. We still plan to close every night at 9, except Sundays when we close at 8. And as reflected in the report, we plan to stop serving beer 30 minutes before closing. We have a small patio in front, outside with 3 tables, but beer will not be allowed outside the front door. A no alcohol outside sign will be posted at the door. We hope you will consider granting us this permit. We've been a vital part of the community for 12 years. We regularly give to programs at Burroughs and Burbank Highs and other local charities. We also give a 50% discount to all police, fire, and active military members. We don't make money giving this discount. It's just our way of giving back to those who serve to make our community better. We really enjoy being a family business here in Burbank and getting to know our customers. Our 2 kids often spend time there with their friends. We're a family restaurant, and this won't change that. Thank you so much.
Thank you. We will now open the public hearing from any persons in the audience who wish to speak on this matter. Each person may address the planning board for a maximum time of 3 minutes. Do we have anyone here to speak on this matter? I don't have any cards. Seeing none. Would the representative of the Community Development Department like to make any further comments?
No further comments.
Does the applicant have any further comments?
I do.
That's a no. Does the planning board have any questions for staff or the applicant?
Questions,
A
either
board member.
staff's fine, yes. Is the beer going to be served in bottles or is it draft beer?
I believe through the floor plan that they provided, it looks like they will install a refrigerator that might have bottles. But last time I spoke to the applicant, they said they might install a draft system. So I'm not sure if they're fully aware which one they'll have at this point. I don't know if the applicant wants to answer that question.
Yes, if you could, please.
We will definitely have bottled and/or canned beer. We're exploring maybe putting in a tap system, but have not really gotten too far with that exploration.
How will you be controlling the beer, the bottled beer, walking away? What procedures or processes you have in place?
Well, first of all, that will be strictly prohibited. There is a Serve Safe alcohol awareness program that all my employees will be required to go through. And as I said in my comments, we're paying for that. You know, again, being a family restaurant, we want this to be, we don't want any problems with alcohol. We just want to be able to provide that to our customers.
I too don't want you having any problems with alcohol. That's why I'm asking the question.
Okay.
Do you serve? Do you also serve soft drinks, fountain drinks?
Yes, we do. We have a Coca-Cola fountain, and we have some specialty Philadelphia drinks that we serve in bottles as well.
And the fountain drinks are served in cups?
Yes, sir.
And the cups are transparent?
They are not transparent. They have our logo, and they aren't transparent. We have transparent cups for water.
All right. Thank you.
Uh-huh.
I have a question for staff. Do we make any calls? Has there been any issues, problems, incidents at this location?
I contacted PD and there hasn't been any calls in regards to any nuisances associated with the business.
Okay. Any other questions for staff or the applicant?
I have a question.
Board Member Hadia?
On the presentation, there is this map for the licenses, and I see, is this Barrows High?
I'm sorry, which
It's
one?
It is. So page 3.
Uh-huh.
Page 3 of the top slide. The school is outside the 1,000-foot radius, but do you have a ratio or percentage of the customers they have from school students daily?
No, there's no ratio that I'm aware of.
But I think staff would defer to the applicant to see if we do not have a calculation of how many of their patrons are direct, students from boroughs versus others. I think what he mentioned was, if I recall, and I don't want to put words in his mouth, but I think he said his high, customer period is during lunchtime. So the applicant may be able to attest more as far as your customer base and when you're getting most of your patronage at the location. If the board is okay with him answering that question.
Again, our customer base is a lot of professionals, entertainment people. We do have some borough students for sure. In fact, I've employed several of them over the years. The percentage of boroughs students is extremely low. Under 5, probably 2-3%, I would say. It's hard to say exactly. We do offer them a 10% discount anytime because we support them and they are students. It's hard to say exactly what the percentage would be, but definitely under 5, maybe 2 or 3.
Thank you.
Sir? Yes. Do you currently have students working for you?
Yes. We have one student, high school student who is leaving. Otherwise, everybody is of college age or older.
Well, college is 18. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Okay.
Any other questions for staff or the applicant? Seeing none, I now declare the hearing closed. The planning board will now deliberate. What is the planning board's pleasure? I'll just lead off and say, you know, I've been to this location, parking across the street or at the applicant's place. There's plenty of parking. It's incidental to what they do. I can understand, I don't drink, but I can understand somebody wanting a beer with their cheesesteak. I think that's kind of a thing. I'm not really concerned about the school. I used to work at Pizza Prince right across the street from the school back in the day, and we were serving pitchers of beer, and that was really not an issue because if you have, looks like the three of you are hands-on owners, so you're going to be there to protect your business, especially after 12 years. So I could certainly make the findings. Anyone else? Board Member Lou?
I agree. And I also want to say for those who sent in the public comment that they're against this, that they're worried that it would cause problems in the community. I think that the applicant has, the fact that they are following the guidelines and also, will be, doing the training, safety training in regards to the alcohol. I think they are taking as many precautions as they can. And, just a reminder that this is a conditional use permit. So if there are issues that pop up like this, I'm sure it'll be coming before us again for, some changes. So I can also make the finding.
Remember, Atikani.
I'm somewhat on the fence because we've had a situation where Starbucks wanted to implement a program for beer and wine at their location, which is right across the street. And without going I visited your location, enjoyed the sandwich, and but Mike, I guess I'm able to make the findings based on the fact that you're only asking for beer. You're not going to be serving any wine there, so that's one plus. And it is a smaller, tighter quarters than Starbucks is, and that would lend to more control on what's going on inside the store, and hopefully you're not going to run into a situation where people are walking out with the bottle of beer sitting outside enjoying, especially in this nice weather, a cold beer under the hot sun would be nice. But I'm able to make the findings based on the presentation, and I'm sure as a hands-on owner, you're going to be extremely careful in implementing the conditions. Thank you.
I also want to comment that the Starbucks presentation was a mess, and that was pointed out by you. So this presentation was a little bit more buttoned up. So any more questions, comments, deliberation? Board Member Hadian?
I'm always against alcohol license near school, but forms of everything has changed. Most of the time you have on-site sale, which is good, and usually students order food for pickup, so it's not that they go to the restaurants on a daily basis. So I can support the finding.
Anything to add, Mr. Gamboa?
When I told my wife that this was coming up, she thought it would be great to have a beer with the cheesesteak. So I just encourage you to serve some local Burbank beer as well.
All right. Anyone want to make the appropriate motion? A motion? Board Member Lou?
I move that our board adopt a resolution of the Planning Board of the City of Burbank to approve project number 18-001356 for a conditional use permit based on the findings of fact and subject to the recommended conditions of approval.
We have a first.
Second that.
And we have a second. Is there any more deliberation on this topic? Can we have the roll call, please?
Board Member Gamboa.
Aye.
Board Member Liu.
Aye.
Chair Rosati.
Yes.
Board Member Atikunian.
Aye.
Board Member Hadian.
Aye.
Anyone abstaining or anyone against it? Seeing none, motion passes 5-0. Thank you for coming. Good luck to you. Moving on to item number 4, conditional use permit for 3083 North Lima. This is the time and place for hearing on project number 18-0007025 concerning the application for a conditional use permit allowing the continued operation of an existing brewery, Lincoln Beer Company, with amendments to their previously approved conditional use permit. The amendments pertain to the operational characteristics of the brewery. The project is located at 3083 North Lima Street. Before we begin, do any planning board members have any legal or other conflict of interest regarding this hearing?
No.
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 Have any planning board members had any communications, including written, oral, with the applicant or the applicant's representative or any other person?
No.
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 On Thursday, I was at the brewery, and they had a sign regarding this meeting, and I spoke to the staff briefly about their appearance here. They were informing me that it was happening.
Mr. Attorney, does that preclude him from participating?
No, so long as he identifies the nature of the conversation so that all parties have an understanding of what was discussed off the record.
Can you do that?
Yeah, so I walked in to meet a friend and have a beer, and on the counter was a notice to asking for support. I think that's why we see so many people here. So I asked the server, who I'm familiar with, just about it. I just gotten my packet right before I left, so I didn't even read that it was in the planning, in the docket. So when I saw that what it was, I just made a comment like, "Oh, that'll be my first meeting," and they just explained to me briefly about what they're asking for. But I just bought my beer and went back and read the report once I got home.
Okay. Mr. Ramirez, have the notices as required by law been given?
Yes, they have.
Are there any written communications on this matter?
There are. I believe there is a paper-clipped set that was presented to you, as well as a separate kind of standalone letter that was provided through the Burbank Chamber of Commerce in support of the request. Oh, I'm sorry, and if I can also add, also in front of you is an updated resolution with some strikeout language that we'll talk about when we get to that point. So there's an editorial revision to the front page on the title. I think we wrote it twice based on findings, and it's in strikeout underline in red text. And then one of the conditions in the exhibit on page Exhibit A6, we omitted incorrectly the word outdoors. That's it.
Okay. Will the representative of the Community Development Department please introduce yourself and summarize the matter for us?
Can I get this slide, please? Oh. Good evening, Chair Rosati and members of the board. My name is Marcial Medina, and I'm an assistant planner with the Planning Division. I'm here today to present to you the proposed conditional use permit for the property located at 3083 North Lima Street. The applicant for the conditional use permit is Lincoln Beer Company, which is an existing brewery with a tasting room. Lincoln Beer Company is requesting to amend their current conditional use permit. The property is located at 3083 North Lima Street in an M2 zone property. The property is surrounded by the M2 zone properties and is also bordered by the City of Los Angeles to the north. The brewery was originally approved in 2017, which approved a beer manufacturing use with an incidental tasting room. The amendment to the original CUP will not change the layout of or physical attributes of the brewery. The tasting room will still be restricted to 15% of the overall square footage of the building. The main component of the use is the manufacturing of beer, which will be maintained through the amendment of the CUP. A conditional use permit was approved in 2017, allowing the operation of a brewery with an incidental tasting room. Through this proposed amendment, the applicant is requesting to change some of the operational characteristics that were previously approved. The following are things that the applicant is requesting to change. Number one, to be permitted to operate the tasting room on Mondays. Number two, to allow the tasting room to be open 2 hours earlier on Sundays than what is currently allowed through the current CUP. Number three, to be allowed to host 4 outdoor events per calendar year. Number four, to be allowed to have amplified music. And number five, to allow a food truck or food vendor to park on site. Under the current CUP, Lincoln Beer Company is prohibited from having the tasting room open on Mondays. Through the proposed amendment to the CUP that is being requested today, the applicant is proposing to modify this restriction so that they are allowed to operate on Mondays. The hours of operation on Mondays would be consistent with the hours of operation that currently occur Tuesday through Thursday, which is from 2 p.m. to 10 p.m. The current CUP restricts the hours of operation of the tasting room on Sundays from 12 p.m. to 10 p.m. Through this proposed amendment of the CUP, the applicant is requesting to be open 2 hours earlier than what is currently allowed, so that their new hours of operation would be from 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. on Sundays. The current CUP prohibits the applicant from hosting outdoor events. Through this amendment, the applicant is proposing to amend this restriction to be allowed to have 4 events on site per calendar year. Through the conditions of approval, the applicant will be required to provide notification to the city of the proposed event at least 40 days before the event is set to take place. This notice will be sent to other city departments for their review to ensure that measures will be put in place to mitigate any potential impacts to the events that could have on neighboring properties. Amplified music is prohibited under the current CUP. The applicant is requesting to amend this restriction to allow for amplified music. The amplified music would occur as ambient background music under daily operations and will not be played at a volume as to disturb any neighboring properties and is intended only to be heard by patrons inside the building. The amplified music will also be allowed during the 4 calendar events allowed per year, but will have restrictions put in place under the review of the application of outdoor events as previously mentioned. The applicant is proposing to amend the current CUP to be allowed to park a food truck on site to serve the patrons that are visiting the tasting room. The food truck will be on site only during the same hours of operation as the tasting room. Staff has received comments from the public in regards to the changes to the operational characteristics. Conditions have been placed through this amendment to ensure any potential impacts to the surrounding properties are mitigated. Measures such as allowing the food truck to be on site to clear the street and adding a condition requiring that the subject property and the surrounding areas are maintained and free of any trash or litter. The applicant is also required to submit an application at least 40 days prior to any events. This application will ensure that measures are put in place that will mitigate any potential impacts to the surrounding area. After reviewing the proposed requests, staff has analyzed the proposed amendments to the originally approved CUP and has determined that the requested amendments will not negatively impact the surrounding area and that the project is consistent with the uses in the surrounding area with compliance with the proposed conditions of approval. Board approval would allow the brewery to continue the operation of a brewery with an incidental tasting room, to allow for the tasting room to operate on Mondays, to allow for amplified music indoors, to allow to open at 10 a.m. on Sundays, to allow for a food truck to be parked on site, and to allow for 4 events to occur on site per calendar year. Therefore, staff recommends approval of a resolution of the Planning Board of the City of Burbank to approve project number 18-0007025, amending conditional use permit number 16-0002889, based on the findings of fact and subject to the recommended conditions of approval. Thank you. That concludes my presentation.
Thank you. Before we open up the hearing to the public, I would invite the applicant or their representative to address the planning board. You'll have a maximum time of 15 minutes.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Laura Dunn. This is my husband, Patrick Dunn. We own and operate Lincoln Beer Company. He's the brewer. I do mostly the business side of things. And this is our general manager, Ryan Colby, who's on site literally 7 days a week. We're here just to update a few things. We opened up the tasting room about a little over a year and a half ago and just realized there were some conditions in our CUP that didn't allow us to be open for, Monday night football, Sunday morning football. Food trucks have been parking on the street, which we had a complaint about them parking on the street. So we'd just like to bring that in so our patrons aren't walking across the streets, more for safety than anything. And what else? And the outdoor events, the ABC allows us to have 4 events per year with a Type 77 permit. So we just want our CUP to align with that as well. So I think that's it.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We will now open up the public hearing to hear from any persons in the audience who wish to speak on this matter. Do we have anyone here to speak on this matter? Seeing none? Does the applicant wish to make any further comments? Does the board have any questions for the staff or the applicant? I have a couple questions for the applicant.
Yes.
So, Sunday, 10 a.m. Why so early?
Kickoff, football kickoff.
Are people drinking beer at 10 a.m.?
I don't know. We don't know if they are or not. We just want to be able to open if we wanted to, I guess, for football.
And then the food truck, how does that affect your parking if it's on site? What does that do to your parking requirement?
We have ample outdoor parking because all the businesses around us close when we open, basically. So we have ample parking all the way down our street and down San Fernando Road. There's literally hundreds of spots.
We put it up against the brewery, so it would basically taking up half a spot in our lot.
Is that what it is? Is it half a spot?
Half a spot.
Okay. And give me an idea about these outdoor events. What kind of events are we talking about?
So with our ABC permit, they allow us to have 4 events utilizing our entire brewery space. That includes outdoors and everything, but it has to be fenced off. So we would want to fence it off just to be able to have, like we did a Duff event that we talked to the planning board about and got approved. But we launched Duff Crafted Lager with The Simpsons. And then we launched Trejo Cerveza with Danny Trejo. And so we just kind of want these events to be allowed. We probably won't even do 4 a year, but if we can, we might, like our anniversary would be one, just to allow for seating outside and
essentially there are
fenced
95
off.
other breweries in Los Angeles, so every now and then we just need to give everybody a hit of like, hey, we're still here, and it keeps you competitive.
Sure, I understand. Okay.
Plus, with regards to the events themselves, they're all, we hire outdoor security.
Can I ask you,
If you can come to the mic, thanks.
And just introduce yourself, so it's got to be a public record.
My name's Ryan. I'm Ryan Colby. I'm the general manager at Lincoln. So all of the events are very regulated. We have private security that we hire. We also have off-duty police officers. For both events, we've had that, and it's been very successful. All of the gates make it so that people are required to stay within the confines of our parking lot and our brewery itself, and the flow of traffic of people makes it so it's very clear how they come into the brewery and stay within those gates. And we have security both at the entrance and exit, and there's only one way to enter and only one way to exit.
So you have a plan. Okay. Anyone have any questions for the applicant while they're here? Board Member Aticani?
Thank you. Did you have the opportunity to review an email dated Saturday, August 24th?
Yes.
All right. Any comments? Or how about we do this? Item number 1, dramatic increase in trash. I'm reading it verbatim, in the streets and on the sidewalks.
I disagree. There's not trash in the streets. And just for reference, this email, I've certainly never met this person. I've never heard one complaint. All these are brand new things to me. So there is not, I disagree, there's not trash in the streets. If there was, I've never seen a Lincoln beer can in the street. It just doesn't it's not happening.
And they also raised the issue of parking being non-existent on.
Yeah, and we had Ryan Colby took several pictures this week and last and sent them to Maciel with ample parking on the streets. That's all. I also disagree with that one. Right? Yeah.
Would you say this? I'm having trouble reconciling this. This is some sort of a fabricated.
Yes.
I don't want to use the term, but
Absolutely.
yeah, I think he's just been against us.
fabricated.
Not in my backyard, kind of thing. I've never met this person, certainly, because I've never had anybody complain this way directly to us. I've never received any communication via email, phone, nothing. So,
Do you have food trucks right now parking on the
because-
street right now?
yes, because we're not allowed to park them in our lot. So that's why
Okay.
I'd like to bring that into our lot, so that's not an issue.
How many parking spaces do you have available?
10.
And how many staff do you have?
We only have usually 1 or 2 beer tenders at a time and a manager there. Not all the time, but yeah, 1 or 2.
Total
But
staff.
they don't even park in the parking lot. We allow them. They park on the street.
Okay.
During the day, I park there. My husband parks there. Yeah. So during the day when we're not operational, we all park in our lot.
Okay. There's a mention here something about blasting music in the parking lot.
That hasn't happened.
Okay. Anything? Are you aware of police citing these trucks?
No, I'm not.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Chairperson,
Yeah, please.
Rosati, if we can, some of those questions, I think we might be able to elaborate. So we have been in communications with the individual that submitted this email in the past, as far as we provided them with copies of the staff report, what was going to be presented to you all, and then this was generated kind of subsequent to that. So some of the things that are noted in here, we conducted a site visit of the location prior to finalizing any report, just to kind of see the existing conditions. So during what would better for worse be regular hours of the neighboring businesses, I think the staff report called out those hours being like 8 to 6 in general. There's activity on the street. There is a lot of it is basically employee parking in combination with what's happening on the individual properties. But at the regular, kind of the primary regular hours that they operate, there is parking on the street. If the special events were to be approved, one of the things that we have to do over that 40-day due diligence is determine areas where maybe their employees need to park so that they can basically free up or keep some of those parking spaces available. And their events typically, if I remember correctly, have been on Saturdays.
Saturdays, yeah.
Both of them, yeah. And the other thing that's, I think, of note is there are provisions within the CUP, the conditional use permit, that deal with things like loitering, trash, if they create nuisances that are triggers, one for code violation corrections, and if it's something that isn't addressed and becomes an ongoing public nuisance, then it's those are the reasons for consideration of a revocation hearing before you, where they could lose their entitlement. The other thing I wanted to point out when it comes to just kind of an operational component is prior to this coming before you, they had 2 events under de facto. I was allowing them to happen as a special event. I did inform the applicant that we needed to get a conditional use permit in the queue. It's taken us a little bit longer to process, but in that time frame, when there was the most recent event, I think there was a call for service to PD. PD then showed up and realized, oh, it's an event that you had gotten city approval for. So it was basically just that. It was reported as showed up. They're actually doing something that's been approved by the city, and then they left. Outside of that, I believe there may have been a couple of correspondences related to code enforcement.
There was one code enforcement case that was in regards to the food truck being parked on site. So they were cited by code enforcement, and then they took care of that. So now they're parking on the street.
So what Maciel had mentioned, and if it wasn't caught because his mic maybe had been off, is there was, correctly so, there was a call for a code violation related to the food trucks. because as the current CUP notes that those food trucks aren't allowed. So the corrective action was to cease with the food trucks. It has now been included within the application submittal. I will tell you my experience with these type of facilities are that we've had, I've worked in another city with similar types of breweries where they have had on-site food trucks. And the reason is that, and correct me if I'm wrong, but ABC does not allow you to sell food, to basically have a restaurant
That's
in
right.
combination with the tasting.
Unless we're a bona fide eating establishment, which we are not. So yes.
If I could please clarify, food trucks have the right to operate in the public right-of-way. So the issue was on-site. They're allowed to park on any street they wish, as long as they're complying with the county health standards. Independent of this business, they can park on the street.
But does this violate the ABC of having food on site?
No, it's different. So the scenario being that if they were the ones that were having food production within the building, that would be in violation of their ABC license. But can someone order, let's say, a pizza and have them deliver it to the location and they
Yes.
pick it up? They can do that. So in essence, the food truck functioned that way. It was just a portable food purveyor. And Joe is correct. The city attorney is correct. Food trucks can situate themselves on a public street, but they understood that if they're the ones kind of, in essence, trying to get the food trucks to help facilitate their business, it was best to just be transparent with the planning board and say it's best if we're gonna be the ones that are generating this additional activity, which could impact our neighboring uses. We want to be fully transparent and have it on site. That way, we can control that particular aspect of that food truck service with their taste, venue.
Any other questions for staff or the applicant? Mr. Atakanian?
What's the capacity, number of people in the building?
138.
And if you open up, if you do this outdoor activity, what would the
We ha-
capacity be then? 138 or 338?
We had the fire marshal come through recently for our last event, and he said he was concerned about the 138 in that tasting room. And we actually had him, he stuck around for the majority of the event and found there to be no issues with the amount of people. Because again, we have security on there letting people in and out, so we would never let it get to a place where it's, crammed or anything. It's ample space. That wasn't an issue in the past.
Right, 138 people, but you only have 10 parking spaces. Now, what would happen if you did an outdoor activity like you're requesting 4 times a year? You would have the 138 possibly indoors and possibly how many outdoor?
About another 100 or so, yeah. But again, the fire marshal was just concerned that he would always maintain the 138 in the tap room was what he looked at because the occupancy is written there, and that's what we were approved with.
So, board member, maybe I can elaborate.
Yes,
I think what
please.
you're getting at is, and actually, this is based on input. I think your general manager gave us. So, help me out here. My understanding is that even though the room capacity was 138, in the case of the most recent event, what you actually had people do is you had people kind of phased cycle their way through the location. So, at any point in time, you never exceeded your overall allowed occupancy of the tasting room, but people would line up. Wait for their turn. Once there was space available within the taste room, people would cycle through the outside, and you'd control the space so that they did not have alcohol go outside. So they were able to use the venue, and then in essence, once it got to a certain point, decreased in occupancy, then you'd let another group of people in. Kind of like the way I would look at it, and not to say that I'm an expert in this, but when you go to, like, let's say the Coach store, or a store where they have a certain limited number of people that can come in, you've got the security guard at the front where the rope is, and he'll let in a certain number. Once those people exit, he'll let in another group, and vice versa. That's kind of, if I understand
Yeah,
that. Not that I'm trying to use the coach as an example, but I'm just saying.
No, that's perfect.
Maybe that's similar to the
No,
operation.
that's exactly it. What we did, actually, one of Maciel's pictures I had sent him, and the delineation between being in the event and being lining up for the event is a set of gates that we set up kind of like an amusement park. So we got as many people off of the sidewalks as possible, and we kept the flow of traffic based on arrows put onto the ground to make sure that people knew that they should keep going. We had security inside, and we never exceeded the 138 capacity of our tap room. The intent was to continue along outside into the parking lot. And with regards to the 10 parking spots, those aren't being used because we have it gated off to keep everybody inside. With any of the events, with our promotion, we end up doing, we suggest ride share, carpooling. A lot of our locals just walked there because they live in the neighborhood. And with regards to our beer tenders, we asked our neighbors in the 2 lots next to us if we would be able to gate their lots off as well so that nobody parked there, and we kept it for our beer tenders, or like Danny parked there, and the VIPs at the Simpsons parked there, so they were off the street as well.
I mean, I've been in favor of these tasting rooms, both wine and beer, mainly because of understanding the area, the commercial industrial area. After, especially on weekends and after 6 o'clock, it's kind of a ghost town. There's plenty of parking. Correct me if I'm wrong. Your question was mainly driven about parking, right? How were you going to put 138 cars, or let's say half of them took Uber? What about 75? Is that correct?
It's not only parking. Parking is the big part of it, but it seems to me that when you have it seems to me that more than 138 people are coming to the location.
Probably.
It's not 138 people.
On
It's probably
events.
On events, correct.
So when are these events? Are they on the weekends? Are they after 6? When are they?
They've only been on the weekends, afternoon, and 2 to 10 generally. Yeah. And what we do, we try to walk around to our area businesses and just give them a heads up that, hey, we're having an event in a week. Can we use your parking? You should not have your parking available, just as a heads up.
Are the, in the conditions of approval, the day the event can be held is specified?
So what we said is 4 days maximum. 40 days prior to them considering an event, they would submit that to the city. So a couple of things happen when that occurs. It goes to the process of review with planning. It goes to the process of review with building, fire, and police. So if fire or police condition that off-duty police officers need to be made available, and they're not available on that day, it could cause a shift. They have to move their date. So we have control over the date and the intensity of it through that review process.
All right, that's good information.
Any other questions for staff of the applicant? Mr. Gamboa?
I was just going to ask about your transportation demand actions, which you explained with your ride share and encouraging all that, which is great. And I've never had an issue parking there when I've gone to normal stuff, not an event. I would just encourage maybe having some bicycle parking as a way to a safe place to park. Just as an example, when I was there, use the chain that's hanging there, which is kind of convenient, but it would be another opportunity to allow people to not park in that neighborhood and alleviate some of these actions.
Good idea. Thank you.
Board Member Liu.
This question is actually for staff. I know that you notified the property owners and tenants within a 1,000-foot radius. Right. So do you know how many folks that entailed?
I don't have the exact number of people that received the notice, but it was sent to all the property owners and anyone who lives in that area.
Okay, so just to clarify, we only had one negative feedback about this change?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
A question for staff. So we've had one Burbank Police Department visit, and we've had one code enforcement person visit. Both of them were non-issues. Is there any other issues?
No, I spoke to the police department, and they said they had that one call. Same goes with code enforcement, and both of those were non-issues.
In the music, we're talking about not live music. We're just talking about.
So they would be allowed to have on regular operation days, just like ambient music, something background music that would be played inside, that would not be able to be heard outside.
on days of the events, they could possibly have some kind of amplified music. But as Mr. Ramirez stated, through that application process that we get, or the application that we get 40 days prior to the event day, we can try and mitigate the hours of the amplified music.
Can you tell me who operates after hours there? Is there businesses in that general area that's operating on weekends or after hours?
So in the staff report, I indicated the businesses within that same street, and I looked at all their business applications, and none of them seem to be operating 24 hours.
Marcel, can you clarify too, just there was one neighbor across the street that may have mentioned to you that they run 2 shifts?
Was it the wood cutting? I think it was actually a metal cutting business that may have been running more than
one shift?
Yeah, more than one shift.
Okay, any other questions for staff or the applicant?
What?
Board Member Hadian.
I have a question about the food truck right now across the street. Whose food truck is that? Is it another license that doesn't relate to the brewery?
The food truck that's parked on the street?
Yes.
So the food truck would not, to my understanding, is not associated.
It's not associated.
Is not associated with the Lincoln Beer Company.
So when the applicant is bringing the food truck every day, that truck will also be on the street. So there will be 2 food trucks.
No, this would only allow for one food truck, only one food truck on site in the parking lot.
This application, but the other one will stay there. No one is asking that other food truck to just move out to another location.
Let me clarify, and the applicant can chime in. Is there a possibility that another food truck could situate themselves in the public right of way? I think City Attorney mentioned the fact that there could be another food truck, but what they would be entitled to have on site would be only one food truck. Food trucks can also set themselves up if they want to provide service to the neighboring industrial uses during lunchtime. So they wouldn't be precluded. I don't think our code would preclude food trucks from just basically gravitating to that area, whether it be for the users in and around the area or associated with the fact that they see that there's a high, occupancy or access to this location, and say, oh, well, someone else, Koji, decides that they're going to, set up shop across the street. That wouldn't be precluded, but they would not be able to put another food truck beyond, if you approve it, on their property, just that one, unless it was a special event. Or let's say they had a handful of trucks coming in for a special event, but that would have to be vetted through this process of 40 days.
So for regular days, there will be the food truck on site that you're requesting to have. And then we don't know what happens outside the property.
That's
there
correct.
You may have actually, when you have the music and you will open on Mondays, then eventually will be more people coming and more food trucks.
I mean, probably not, to be honest. They kind of coordinate with each other, so they don't really want competition. They don't want more than one truck there. So they kind of have a commissary together and they coordinate and they come out. They have a schedule. They don't want to have that competition. We don't have that many people to where it would validate them having more than one truck.
Half the time they cancel.
Yeah, we don't pay them. They don't pay us. There's nothing. We just have establishment with people.
I understand, but it's kind of like irresistible things that happens when crowd is found in one location, the food trucks follow. And I have another question about the music. What is the noise level of amplified music, and how does it impact the record studios or work areas adjacent to your property? Because
so currently you cannot hear, if you're standing in the parking lot, you can barely hear the music that's playing inside. I mean, our doors are usually closed because it's hot and we keep the AC on. So you can't hear it from the street,
You want to have the amplified music indoor only?
At this time, with the exception of special events that we would get approved,
And outdoor will be 4 events per year.
Outdoor and indoors, it's all, the entire property can be used.
So it's always enclosed unless for the 4 events that happen throughout the year.
Exactly, yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions for staff or the applicant? Seeing none, I'm going to declare the hearing closed. The planning board will now deliberate. What is the planning board's pleasure? I'll just lead off and just say, for the most part, I'm okay with all the conditions. I'm a little, maybe you guys can help me, but I'm a little hesitant about the 4 events. I'm okay with the 4 events, but the music, because now you got the music, more food trucks, and if you're an existing neighbor and if you are working, it kind of interferes with you. Then you got all the parking issues. You know, I think it's cool. I think it's cool to have the events, but I'm also thinking it could interfere with an existing neighbor who's paying their property taxes, their rent, and now all of a sudden their business is being interfered with and their peace and quiet. So let me know what your thoughts are.
Perhaps the events, that's why I asked the question, if there's a designated day for the event, perhaps the events should be only held on Saturdays or Sundays, on the weekends.
But what if you operate your law firm on Saturday or Sunday and you want to go in there and work? I'm just throwing it out there. I mean, I don't want to be a killjoy, but at the same time, I want to be considerate of the other.
Along the same line, my concern was Sunday at 10 a.m. If there's someone there who wants to finish up something or get ready for Monday, work on Monday, getting something set up or getting it ready for Monday. That was the other thing that I was concerned about getting started. And the 15% alcohol, I'm not sure how that's all fitting in with, it's incidental to the brewery, 15%, all these people drinking, how could possibly be 15%? But anyway, that's neither here nor there. So
you're not skeptical.
Yeah, I think that's a question for the operators, but I will tell you, I've been here 2.5 years. Seeing these breweries in operation, they are trying their darndest to survive and basically grow the business. And eventually, if the business grows big enough, usually they grow out of the space. They're far from it right now. I think they're still trying to make a namesake for themselves. The two pop-up events that they had created an opportunity to build their brand. I think, like anything, if the board so agrees to allow it, one of those things that we can do, maybe this provides a little bit better kind of a pilot approach, is to say, if you allow them to have the 4 events, maybe we report back within a year of the approval and see where they're at. And if we have issues that haven't been addressed, then there's an understanding that maybe the events can get scaled back, i.e. number and limitation of time. But I think at this point, they're in that critical stage of the breweries, and I've dealt with one in San Fernando in a similar way, that they're trying their darndest to grow the business and hang on. And usually those first 5 years are the toughest for the breweries. So I think, and you all have shown propensity over time to support the businesses. And I think if this creates an opportunity to do that, the onus is on us too to be vigilant through that process and see if there's going to be issues and bring that back to you. But if you want to put a provision in there that planning commission, the planning staff report back in a year and see what happens after 4 events. If there's issues, then maybe we need to look back at scaling that back a bit.
Board Member Gambo.
I think to your points that the special events, how they may be disruptive, considering we're in Burbank, a lot of filming, a lot of just street work, street tree trimming, these kind of things that can be disruptive early morning, any kind of day permitting, that's the day in advance. With these events, they have to know, they're going to know 40 days in advance. They're going to be advertising it, and it's going to be pretty well shown what's happening. So there won't be any surprises. So maybe an inconvenience, but we also have a lot of inconveniences that happen in the city that just make the city kind of, parades and street fairs and type of things that are fun, that inconvenience some people, but they're kind of bring some liveliness, some atmosphere, and they've created a really great space that's good to hang out, not just for adults drinking beer, but it's because of the license, kids are allowed to be there. It's a family event. People bring their dogs. People aren't there to get hammered. People are there just to enjoy good beer, craft beer, drink locally, support local businesses. So I think some of the negative externalities that we might be concerned with, it's only going to be a couple days a year that are going to be well notified, and they can do things to help their neighbors be on board with it too. So I think that's, it's a valid concern, but I think that it's probably not. I think the benefits outweigh any potential negatives in this.
Board Member Liu?
Maybe it would also help in terms of your deliberation. What types of mitigations, like when they come to you and say, we're going to do the special events, here's 40 days, what types of things is the city looking at to mitigate?
Everything from ensuring life safety issues as far as the safety of individuals that are attending the event, as well as any issues if we see that there is insufficient parking in and around the area during, let's say, on a Saturday, because there is also diagonal parking just, I'm orienting myself, but out near San Fernando, that basically on the weekends is not being used. So parking management would be one of the things we'd be looking at. Security, controlling the space. Also, one of the things that we've done in some instances is require them to also notice the neighbors that this event is going to happen on such and such day. So when we talk about a 40-day notification, maybe we say within day 15 or 30 days leading up, we give them a heads up. And, if someone's going to have an event, they know, okay, this is the day there may be some disruption. Maybe I won't do X, Y, Z that day, understanding. And then if there's issues, we also identify who specifically at the location can be contacted by any of the neighboring operators and or the police so that they can correct something if there's an issue on the property. So all those things are what we evaluate with both building, fire, PD, and even public works. Let's just say they had to do something where they needed an encroachment to occupy a portion of the adjacent right-of-way. They'd have to get that permit from public works as well.
And then also too, it's changing, right? So like one event, you try something and then you'll realize that based on complaints or whatever happens that you're going to have to change it for the next event. For instance, like you have the ability to allow or disallow the outdoor music. So I think that gives you a lot of flexibility and that makes me comfortable to support those 4 days.
Board Member Adekane.
I think Mr. Ramirez's suggestion that we revisit or there be some sort of a provision in here, allow what's being requested and revisit the issue after several events have been taken place. And if there's any concerns at that time, they could be addressed or as part of an amendment, or just basically after that point, if there's no concerns, then it could be permanent.
Yeah, I think it's having a sunset clause is a good idea, and the feedback also helps us in future permits. So I think that's a great idea.
Yeah.
So, any other questions, comments? If not, if somebody wants to make the appropriate motion,
I have.
Board Member Hadian.
I have a question it's not a question actually, I just wanted to see if it's possible to limit the number of food truck days to the 4 days that you have per calendar. So at least the food trucks and the generators are really loud. And the noise is my concern. We are having 7 days of food truck plus amplified music, and I would like to see that indoor amplified music and the food truck limited to the number of event days per year. At least we'll leave 1 day, a quiet day for those studios or offices that working in the area and they need quiet zone. And as you mentioned, they order. You see people order food. We have tons of food ordering apps these days. People can just order their food. But as long as we limit the number of food truck days, I'm sure there will be other food trucks. There will be food, and the noise that goes with the food truck is really bothering people working in the area.
So just you could put that condition on, but the food trucks can still be in the right of way. It's not going to affect whether they're on the street in front of those other businesses, because that's state law.
Yes, because those that are on the public right of way can be cited if they cause anything.
No, food trucks can operate as long as they're complying with their county health permit.
No, not cited just because they're public, right? If anything happens, if they don't keep the area clean, if they're doing something outside their
Sure.
conditions, they can be cited.
But you mentioned noise from the generators. I just want you to understand that the city may not be able to affect
The level of
noise from generators from food trucks because they're allowed to operate anywhere in the public right of way.
I think what the city attorney is trying to say is, if we do institute, like, let's say 4 days, there's nothing from stopping them from calling a food truck and say, just park right here on the curb. You're still going to have the generators and the noise because they can operate in the public right away. So we're not really solving anything because the food trucks can still be there.
So there is one food truck that's, as I hear, is always there, or most of the time.
No.
They keep changing. But the one that's being requested will always be on site.
But it's not one food truck that we're asking, like California food truck. It's all different food
Can,
trucks. Just
I don't want to open up the hearing, but she did bring up a comment, so I just want to come up. I just want to ask the question. Are you planning on having a food truck there every single day
food trucks currently come, between certain hours that we're open. Yes.
on site?
But
on your
none of them
property?
are. No, they're not on site right now. They're
That's
on
what
the
I'm-
street, and we have people complaining about them on the street because generators. So we're trying to put them in our lot so they're not bugging anybody.
So chances are you're going to have a food truck on your lot every day.
Every day that we're open.
Yeah.
I mean, usually just Friday, Saturday, Sunday, though. To be totally honest, they don't usually come during the week.
So you're bringing one food truck on site, and you cannot control. No one can actually control those that are already on the public right of way.
Currently, I'm not bringing any food trucks. Currently, they are on the public street.
If planning board approves the food truck.
Yeah.
So with the food truck on site and those outside, the noise will be doubled, tripled.
Like I
from
said
the
before,
generators.
it's never going to be more than one truck. We don't have the kind of crowd that trucks would be lining up down the street to come to us. It's
We're only
not like
conditioned
that.
for one truck.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm not going to have like 5 trucks in my lot. I'm only allowed to have 1 truck in my lot, but nobody else is going to come park on the street. There aren't going to be other trucks parking on the street because again, the crowd just isn't there.
Mr. Ramirez?
Yeah, just to clarify, I think, and I apologize, we probably didn't state it as clearly, Board Member Hadian. They're creating a space for a food truck on the property. In other words, that one can come and park, but they're not actually bringing a food truck. In other words, they're not hiring a food truck to come onto the property. What they're saying is we have a space on site, i.e. prospective food trucks that want to have kind of an association with the food tasting, the tasting, the beer tasting in the brewery. If you want, we have a space. If you take that space, that's the only space we have, and you can set up shop. So what they'll probably say is today it might be koji, tomorrow it might be grilled cheese, and then vice versa. And some days it might not be anybody because no one comes because there's not enough people there. So I just want to make sure. So it's not that they're somehow eliciting a response that we have food trucks up and down the venue. There's probably not enough people there to support that. What they're saying is if they can coax someone to go on the property, they now have a space for it, and they won't have people milling around in the public right of way. They now have a location on site.
Not only is it safer, but if it's on their property, then they can control the trash and the debris because now it's on their property and they have to remove it. So,
And if we have noise issues, we can also deal with those because now it's on the property and now it's part of their CUP.
Yeah. No, what do you think?
I think the same way that there is assumption that some days maybe no truck parks on the side. There might be days that there is that truck on the side and there is food trucks outside. So who controls the overall noise, the cumulative noise generated by all of these trucks?
You can't control it. It's public
No one
right
can
away.
control. That's why I was thinking
So
of just limiting the food truck on site, the dedicated space, to just the 4 events per year.
But there's also going to be the fact that if there is a truck on site, other trucks are probably not going to park there because they're wasting their time. Where you have a truck on site, that's going to be the one mostly providing the food. So the one parked on the street is probably not going to get any business, and it's not going to be worth their while to wait there to try and serve.
Plus, from a safety standpoint of people, going across the street, getting food, coming back and forth, dropping things in the street. I think it might be better to have them on site, and at least you can control the safety aspect. And the other thing is, we want these guys to survive, right? We want them to flourish and grow 3 times the size. So I think we're trying to help, and I think that's what the sunset clause is for too. So if we come back a year from now and it's trouble, then we're going to pull the CUP. So I think we're doing everything we can to mitigate all of our issues. My mind with the music and yours maybe with the noise. It's not going to be perfect, but I think it helps. I think having them on site helps rather than in the street. I'd rather have them on site than the street. And I think Mr. Atakani makes a great point. If they see the food truck on site, they're probably going to keep rolling because they're going to say, well, they got someone right there. Why would they come to me?
And for lack of a better word, these trucks, as I think she mentioned, it's almost like a unspoken rule, or they have some sort of an understanding amongst each other. I don't want to use the term a mafia or anything like that, but it's similarly structured, I would say. Like, a lot of wrecking yards, they communicate with like how wrecking yards operate. They communicate with each other. If someone comes in and as to how business is run, there's certain unwritten codes and so forth. So no one impedes on the other truck's space, let's say, trying to steal business away from them, because they could be in a situation where that truck another day could be in their space, stealing their business away. So it sort of works like that. So as far as, and I agree with you, the noise is an issue. I did read concern about the generators and what type of noise they do, but I think probably the on-site is going to provide better a shield for the noise versus where it's outside. This way, maybe the building or the surrounding will absorb some of the noise. Or, as Mr. Ramirez pointed out, if there is a complaint about the noise, now it's no longer a public right-of-way issue. It's an issue that relates to the CUP as to what noise conditions are in there, and they need to comply with.
Board Member Gamboa.
Yeah, I think to that point, these trucks aren't like an ice cream truck where they're cruising around the neighborhoods trying to find a place to stop. They're trying to book places ahead of time to go, let their followers know they're going to be there, let the brewery know they can advertise who's coming that day, because it's part of a selling point to find that specific food. So the likelihood of 2 people competing for a spot is going to be slim, just showing up. Now, there's probably opportunities where a busy night, a big event like a big Rams Monday night game, like that might draw 2 trucks potentially, but those you can kind of plan for that a little bit, or it might happen, but most of the time it's not. There's probably not going to be a food truck there like on a Tuesday night.
Any more deliberation? If there's not, if somebody wants to make a motion and include or not include the sunset clause, that would be wonderful.
Chairperson, could I get clarification? Just, we use the word sunset clause. Is it, if just to clarify, it sounds like there may be an interest as part of your discussion to consider 2 things. One, the 4 events and the food trucks, that if it is approved, that maybe it's conditioned that within a year's time from when they start this process, that we come back and report back to you as part of a public hearing.
Correct.
On what effects, if any, have occurred as a result of both the food truck and the special event, and if those specific items, those 2 items, are issues of concern that have to be readdressed, that public hearing only focus on those 2 items as opposed to creating a double jeopardy for approval of the whole project.
No,
and it just be those items.
Just those 2 items.
Okay.
The special events and the food trucks.
I understand. Thank you.
I'm just thinking workload too. I mean, do we want them to come back regardless, or do we want them to come back only if there is an issue? I'm fine with the latter, but I understand that you sound like you wanted more information.
Yeah, there is language that if just in our code that if there's multiple calls of and substantiated public nuisance, that's an automatic trigger. But what I would say is, you're right. If that's something for you all to consider. If you want it to be where there is no issue and it not come back to you, but it sounds like there's some interest to just be updated regardless of those two items, just to see how their effectiveness, because there are other breweries both in operation and maybe some that are being considered. So it's your prerogative as a group whether you want it to come back automatically within a year's time, or there's some special trigger, like if they create, a public nuisance issue that can be verified, that it come back to you, which we would do anyway through a revocation hearing if we couldn't correct it. But it's your prerogative. I just want to make sure you have those options available to you.
I mean, I kind of like having information only because I know these breweries, we've done like 3 or 4 and some of the wine ones. I like the information. I don't have to have it. Whoever wants to make the motion, I'm flexible.
I would think it would be helpful to get the additional information if it would help us with other hearings, so we don't have to go through the same process.
So report back versus an actual opening of a public hearing.
Correct. Just a report.
Okay.
Yeah.
On 2 items only? Under 2 items? We
Food
have
truck
5.
and 4 events. Did you want something else?
It's just 5 items. I wanted to make sure it's just 4.
Yeah, just the 2 that we were concerned about.
I think we should include the amplified music too.
Okay. We can do that.
We can report back on all 3.
Okay. Anyone want to make the motion as amended? Or make a motion?
I'll go ahead and make a motion to adopt a resolution of the Planning Board of the City of Burbank to approve project number 18-000725, amending conditional use permit number 16-0002889, based on the findings of fact and subject to the recommended conditional approvals of the findings of fact and subject to the recommended conditional approval. There's twice in there. I thought we were going to strike that last
We
line.
provided a handout.
It is a handout.
Yes. All right.
Sorry about that.
Based on the handout, obviously, that last sentence is a duplicate. As amended, with an update in about a year's time as to 3 additional conditions that are being approved today in reference to the food trucks, amplified music, and the special events.
And that's via report back to the board.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, report. We have a motion.
Second.
We have a second. Any more deliberation?
If we can get a roll call on the vote.
Roll
Thank
call,
you.
please.
Board Member Gamboa,
Yes.
Board Member Liu,
Aye.
Chair Rosati,
Yes.
Board Member Atikunian,
Aye, as amended.
Board Member Hadian.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0. No one abstaining, no one against. Congratulations. Thank you. Okay, moving on with our meeting. Election of chair and vice chair. We are going to change chair and vice chair. Vice chair actually is no longer with us. So at this time, I would like to nominate for consideration Board Member Atukanian as chair. Been with us 4 years now.
Yes.
Good experience, good deliberation. I would nominate Mr. Atukanian to be our chair.
Like this thing works, just
That's second.
there's a first and a second. Yeah. Is there anybody else that wants to make a motion for nominee for chair? Take that as no. Okay. So, Griselda, can we have a
Roll call.
Roll call. And that is for there's a first and a second for Board
Yeah.
Member Atukanian to be chair.
I made the motion. We had the second by Board Member Liu.
Board Member Gamboa,
Aye.
Board Member Liu,
Aye.
Chair Rosati,
Yes.
Board Member Atikunian,
Aye.
Board Member Hadian.
Aye.
Unanimous.
Congratulations.
Congratulations, sir.
Thank you. Thank you for the vote of confidence.
Vice chair.
Is there
Anyone want to be vice chair?
Well,
I will serve as vice chair. if no one wants to be vice chair.
I guess I'll make a motion for Chair Rosati to be vice chair. Second?
Second.
Anyone second? You second? Okay. Do we need a roll call
Roll
for
call.
that too? All right.
I'll second it.
Sorry. So there's a first and a second. Now Chair Atukanian made the motion to consider Board Member Rosati to be the vice chair, and Board Member Hadian seconded the motion. Any others? Okay, none. If we can get a vote, Griselda.
Board Member Gamboa,
Aye.
Board Member Loop,
Aye.
Vice Chair Rosati,
Aye.
Chair Atikunian,
Aye.
Board Member Hadian.
Congratulations, Vice Chair.
Oral communications are limited to 3 minutes. Anyone here for oral communications? Seeing none. Any reports?
No reports.
Approval of minutes. Have we had a chance to look at the July 22nd minutes? If so, if you can make a motion.
I can make a motion.
We have a motion.
A second.
We have a second. Can we have the roll call?
Board Member Gamboa.
I'm going to abstain.
One abstention.
Yes, thank you. Board Member Loop,
Aye.
Board Member Rosati,
Yes.
Chair Atikunian,
Aye.
Board Member Hadian.
Aye.
We have 4 yes, 1 abstention.
And just for the record, the abstention was because that particular meeting took place and Board Member Gamboa wasn't on the board at that time, so, okay.
Items from the planning board. Planning board members may introduce new items for discussion, but no action may take place except to place the item on a future agenda. Anything from the planning board? Seeing none? City planner comments?
We have 2 items on here. There is a potential to have, in addition to your regular meetings, some special meeting requests. I believe we have one coming up. I know that's October 7th. 77 Front Street would be the item. So I wanted to check your all's availability at this point for that special hearing date. So it'd be one item. It'd be that item to be discussed, and it would be for the plan development agreement, and environmental documents. Those would all be forthcoming to you on that date if you're available.
I'm good.
October 7th. Typically, you meet the 2nd and the 4th, but this one would include another one specifically for that item.
I'm fine as well.
I'm unavailable that day.
You're
I'm not available.
Not available? Okay.
I can make it happen.
Okay. Let me let's take a look and see. I'd prefer to try to get all 5 of you at the meeting. So let me see what we can do. Question would be, let us come back. We'll come back and we'll poll you all. It doesn't have to be set in stone right now, but at least for now, we understand there's 4 or 5 available if we
Yeah.
have it on Monday the 7th. The other one would be alternatively, what about the 14th of October? That's a regularly scheduled meeting. If I'm assuming you all can attend.
I
that
can
meeting.
attend any regular meeting.
We'll have to figure it out. Okay. Thank you, guys. Second item is, since now vacant position was Vice Chair Eaton's, this is the selection of a liaison to the Arts and Public Places Committee. We're going to put it on the agenda for the next meeting. So just want to give you a heads up in case somebody's interested. You can let the chair know that you're interested, and maybe there's a.
Can you give
get
us
that
the time and day that it usually meets?
I will get that information for you.
Okay.
I don't have it off the top of my head.
Okay.
And prior to that upcoming meeting for 77 Front Street, we will be providing you with an updated report. I don't know the date specific yet because it has been brought up regarding the greenhouse gas reduction plan. So we'll be providing you with an update regarding that particular effort of the cities.
Very good. We will now adjourn the meeting to September 9th, 2019. Thank you all for your participation.